Chapter 1869. As the extremely aggressive fire ape's soul essence was absorbed into the phoenix celestial body, the desolate aura that filled the entire cave was immediately swept away. As soon as the fire ape's soul essence entered the phoenix celestial body, the entire celestial body's 13200 small dots formed a 13,200 hurricane pillar that immediately entangled the fire ape's soul essence, constantly wearing it down and tearing it apart. In just the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, not only were the flames around the soul essence annihilated, even the soul essence was annihilated into a tiny particle. That particle was the most essential thing, and just a few wind pillars couldn't erase it. The phoenix celestial body let out a long cry, and it was actually filled with joy. The entire celestial body trembled rapidly, and all the wind pillars within its body changed direction, blowing towards the phoenix head of the celestial body. Very naturally, the soul essence followed the wind pillars and flew towards the phoenix head. However, there was also a small red dot on the phoenix head. As soon as the soul essence entered, that small red dot suddenly ignited into a cluster of flames, and then the flame was extinguished. The wind pillars surrounding this small dot also disappeared, and the small dot gradually condensed into a transparent appearance. Following the formation of a transparent crystal, countless information swarmed into Xiaohua's mind like a swarm of bees. Ah! Xiaohua couldn't help but scream miserably. His entire head felt like it was about to explode, and his figure suddenly fell from midair. Xiaohua, Shui was shocked, and hurriedly went forward. Just as Xiaohua fell, the phoenix celestial body was absorbed into his body, and he easily fell into Shui's bosom. At this critical moment, the reverse light in the space behind Xiaohua's head suddenly lit up, and several rays of light flew out, protecting Xiaohua's mind. Numerous information poured into the reverse light, along with the rays of light. After an unknown amount of time, Xiaohua woke up from his coma. Before he even opened his eyes, he smelled an elegant fragrance. Xiaohua, who had been intimate with Fairy Hongxia for a long time, immediately recognized that this was Shui's body fragrance. He greedily took a deep breath, and when he opened his eyes, he saw Shui's worried gaze. Seeing Xiaohua open his eyes, Shui was pleasantly surprised. She took the initiative to reach out and hug Xiaohua's shoulder. She pressed her pink face against Xiaohua's ear and let out a long sigh. "Xiaohua, you're finally awake." Xiaohua easily lifted his mouth and kissed Shui's earlobe. Shui quivered as if she had been electrocuted and rebuked. "This concubine was worried about you for half a day. You just woke up and you're already bullying me." With Shui's abnormally shy appearance, how could she still be a peak stage tea refining cultivator? How was she any different from a little girl in the secular world? "Thank you for your hard work." Seeing Shui let go of him, Xiaohua jumped up, bowed to the ground and said with a smile. Shui's face regained some color. She pouted and ignored him. She pointed at the two magic tools floating in the air and asked, "What's going on?" That year, this concubine had also seen Uncle refine them. How come there wasn't such a big movement? Xiaohua lifted his hand and rubbed his temples that were still somewhat swollen. He smiled bitterly in his heart. He naturally knew the reason. It was nothing more than a whimsical idea. He put the two magic tools together on the spur of the moment, and refined them together. Who would have thought that half of the fire ape's soul essence would be sealed inside the two magic tools? When they were refined together, the two halves of the fire ape's soul essence would fuse into one and become a complete soul essence. This wasn't something that a foundation establishment cultivator could resist. How could this compare to Ling Jingyi refining a magic tool with half of the fire ape's soul essence? Moreover, Ling Jingyi's bloodline also contained the true blood of the fire ape. Presumably, he wouldn't suffer a backlash and wouldn't be harmed by the fire ape's soul essence. Of course, Xiaohua's adventure this time was a success. His harvest was also plentiful. Not only did the Phoenix Dharma body obtain the fire ape soul essence, even Xiaohua himself also obtained a lot of information. Of course, it was only plentiful and not complete. Xiaohua still didn't know how to use the fire ape soul essence. Although there was a lot of information that entered Xiaohua's mind, it was all owned by the fire ape. The majority of it wasn't something that Xiaohua could understand. If it wasn't for the protection of reverse light, Xiaohua would have probably been pushed crazy by these things. Alas, this husband also didn't expect my cultivation to be so profound. Xiaohua blinked his eyes and said, I actually successfully refined this sun-moon corona. TCH, seeing Xiaohua's somewhat narcissistic appearance, Shueshue very naturally raised her fist and lightly punched his shoulder. She rebuked. Don't be so rash in the future. It's really too dangerous. You don't know how worried this concubine was. I know, Xiaohua said in a low voice. He smiled and reached out to embrace Shueshue. Soon after, Xiaohua pointed his hand and the sun-moon corona flew back to his hand. However, when Xiaohua's divine sense swept over it, he was surprised again. What's wrong? Shueshue was stunned. She struggled out of Xiaohua's arms and looked at the brand new magic artifact. She asked curiously, This thing is called the sun-moon corona? Why is it divided into two parts? One is called the glorious sun, and the other is called the shadow moon. And it's even in the possession of my misty mountain and flying phoenix ridge? Xiaohua smiled bitterly. He also vaguely knew the name of this magic artifact from the fire ape soul. As for why it was divided into two parts, the fire ape didn't know. He only knew from the fire ape's resentment that it was very apprehensive of this magic artifact. This husband also doesn't know. However, you see, this magic artifact has a layer of restriction. Moreover, it's very powerful. It's far from what my cultivation can guess. Presumably, this was left for you. Xiaohua immediately remembered Ling Jingyi's instructions. Shueshue lightly bit her lips and nodded. She said, And inside the restriction is a soul seal. It's related to this concubine. Soul seal? Xiaohua was stunned. His eyes moved, but seeing Shueshue's lazy face, he knew that she didn't want to say more. He handed the sun-moon corona over and said with a smile, Since it's like this, wife should take it. No, you take it. Shueshue didn't raise her hand at all. The corner of her mouth raised and said, This thing is very important to this concubine, and this concubine doesn't have the power to protect herself. It's most suitable to leave it with husband. When this concubine needs it, husband can give it to this concubine. You really know how to pick a place. Xiaohua smiled. With a wave of his hand, he put the magic artifact into his space. Once this thing is in your husband's hands, no one can take it away. Shueshue seemed to remember Xiaohua's stingy appearance and actually laughed. Seeing Shueshue's smile like a flower, Xiaohua was also happy in his heart. At this moment, Xiaohua suddenly felt something in his heart. He suddenly raised his head and saw the flame forest mountain. He said in a low voice, Refining this magic artifact is indeed useful. Soon after, Xiaohua clapped his hand and took out the sun-moon corona. He held it in his hand and activated his magic power. Following the flickering of the sun-moon corona, Xiaohua slightly narrowed his eyes. It seemed like he could see through the cave and look outside. Chapter 1870. After a long while, the sun-moon corona's brilliance finally extinguished. Shueshue whispered, Husband, what did you sense? That fire ape is indeed in Flame Forest Marsh. Xiaohua nodded. I can use this sun-moon corona to roughly sense its location. That thing also seems to have sensed. The fire ape's soul essence was rushing here, but it stopped just now. I wonder why? Then what about the lightning beast? Shueshue was first happy then panicked. Xiaohua shook his head. I can't sense any lightning beast. However, we can't stay here for long. If it was just the fire ape, it would be fine, but if there's also the lightning beast, how can we be their match? Let's go. Saying this, Xiaohua put the sun-moon corona into his space. At this moment, a messaging talisman flew into the cave. Haha, great. Xiaohua was overjoyed. Grandmaster Zhenyi came, it's really the right time. However, when Xiaohua flew out of the cave and saw only Xiangyang and Yin Qinglian, he couldn't help but be stunned. Xiangyang clearly knew Xiaohua's thoughts and said with a smile, Grandmaster Zhenyi hasn't come yet, but I've already discussed it with your senior sister-in-law. According to the time, the Jade Slip should have already reached the Imperial Thunder Sect. Moreover, Grandmaster Zhenyi should have also come to Shihuang Town. Since he hasn't come yet, then presumably he isn't in the Imperial Thunder Sect. Although we have Grandmaster Zhenyi's help, we have a better chance of obtaining the lightning beast's core. However, if he doesn't come, there are still many sects and cultivation families eyeing the lightning beast. If we're late, I'm afraid we'll miss the opportunity. This core is related to my lifespan. I really can't wait. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. He naturally knew eldest senior brother's urgent thoughts, but what were the fire ape and the lightning beast? Yesterday, they almost couldn't deal with the fire ape's soul essence. How could they subdue the lightning beast? After thinking for a moment, Xiaohua nodded and said, I'll let eldest senior brother know. I've just finished refining the magic tool I obtained from Misty Mountain. Is that so? Great. Xiangyang said with a happy expression. However, I've already sensed that the fire ape and lightning beast seem to be rushing in our direction. If eldest senior brother wants, we can rush over right now. Are you kidding me? Xiangyang's expression changed when he heard this. He asked anxiously, Are you telling the truth? Absolutely. Xiaohua nodded without hesitation. Damn it, then why aren't you running? Xiangyang glared at Xiaohua and immediately flew into the air, asking, Which way should we run? Xiaohua pointed with his finger. Xiangyang waved his hand without hesitation. Let's go. The four of them flew for more than half a day. Seeing that they were about to reach the periphery of the flame forest marsh, Xiangyang stopped and asked in a low voice, Junior brother Xiao, how is it now? Xiaohua took out the sun moon corona, sensed it for a moment and nodded. I can't sense the fire ape's information anymore. It must be far away from it. Yes. Xiangyang relaxed and smiled bitterly. I knew that the thunder beast was close to the fire ape, but I couldn't attack it. I really had no choice. Junior brother Xiao, the fire ape left the flame forest swamp, and actually found its way to our vicinity. Is it because of junior brother's sacrificial refining of the magic tool? Yan Qinglian inquired. Xiaohua nodded. Indeed. Then if you're controlling the magic tool now, won't the fire ape be able to sense it? It shouldn't. Xiaohua smiled. When I was sacrificial refining, something went wrong and attracted the fire ape's attention. Controlling this magic tool shouldn't attract its attention. Okay. Yan Qinglian nodded. The four of them waited for several hours. Seeing that the moon was bright and the stars were few, Xiaohua asked in a low voice, Eldest senior brother, where should we go? In my opinion, it's better to first see where the cultivators of the other sects are. If we can join forces, that would be the best. Otherwise, we can only watch from the sidelines and see if there's a chance. Xiangyang was obviously a bit diffident. Yes. Xiaohua thought for a moment and said, Let's go to the place where the fire ape stopped to take a look. Maybe there are some fellow Taoists there. Xiangyang and the others didn't have any objections. They followed Xiaohua and flew to the other side of the flame forest swamp. Before Xiaohua's group of four arrived, their divine senses swept over, and they were immediately shocked by the miserable situation in front of them. They looked at each other in astonishment, and then increased their flying speed. When they arrived, although they were already mentally prepared, they still couldn't help but sigh endlessly. They saw that this was a place filled with rugged mountain rocks. The surrounding area was about several hundred feet of undulating gentle slopes. There were several dozen corpses of cultivators. They couldn't be said to be complete corpses, but they were all broken corpses. They were scattered all over this desolate mountain area. Dark brown blood stains had already dried up and were smeared on the mountain rocks. The strangest thing was that these several dozen cultivators' heads could be considered complete, but there was a bowl-sized hole on each head. The inside of each head was empty and bloodstained. All of their brains had been dug out by spirit beasts. Moreover, there were many burn marks on the mountain rocks. Occasionally, there were also marks of lightning strikes. Next to these cultivators' corpses, there were some scattered medicinal pills, yellow talismans, and so on. As for storage pouches, without exception, they were all torn apart. There were also many broken magic tools. The majority of them were broken and were no longer worth repairing. Only a large amount of spirit stones were left on the ground, untouched by anyone. Sigh. Shueshue sighed. She slightly raised her head and looked into the distance. Immediately after, Yan Qinglian also shook her head and no longer looked at the miserable situation. Forget it. Xiaohua glanced at Xiangyang and said in a low voice, "Mortals have a custom of being buried in the ground for peace. Although we cultivators don't emphasize this, it's also not appropriate for these fellow Taoists' corpses to be left here. Little brother, how about we melt them?" Xiangyang slightly nodded and said, "It's also a good deed for you." Hearing Xiangyang's command, Xiaohua sighed and waved his hand. Dozens of starfires flew out and landed on the corpses under the control of his divine sense. It didn't take long for the corpses to be cleaned up. Then Xiaohua didn't stand on ceremony. He waved his hand and gathered the scattered spirit stones, medicinal pills, and yellow talismans into his storage pouch. Xiangyang released his divine sense and checked the tokens and magic tools scattered on the ground. After Xiaohua collected the spirit stones, he said, "The fellow Taoists who died here include 7 Skills Sect, Fuzhan Sect, Huangdao Sect, and Raging Flame Sect. There are a total of 9 sections. Most of them were Foundation Establishment cultivators, and a small number of them were Qi Refinement cultivators. Zhan Yu from Huanghua Sect was also within this number." When Xiaohua used the fireball to burn the cultivators' remains, he already saw a head that looked similar to Zhan Yu's. Hearing this, he nodded silently. "Husband, I'm afraid something is wrong." Yan Qinglian, who had been silent, said, "Wasn't Zhan Yu with Qian Yiming? Since Zhan Yu died here, what about Qian Yiming? Why aren't there any traces of Spirit Husbandry Sect's disciples?" Xiangyang nodded first, then shook his head. Ever since Xiaohua killed Pu Jianyuan in the Fog Mountain, Zhan Yu and Qian Yiming revealed the fire ape's whereabouts. Zhan Yu and Qian Yiming lost the foundation for cooperation. Perhaps they thought that we would also come to Flame Forest Swamp, and Qian Yiming might have given up. "I don't think so." Yan Qinglian shook her head and said, "Previously, I thought the same as you. I thought that the cultivators of the various sects were doing their own thing, and wanted to snatch the fire ape or lightning beast's inner core, just like us. But looking at the cultivators who died here, there are no less than 2 people from each sect. Furthermore, there are a few sects gathered together. I'm afraid things aren't that simple." "You're right, wife." Xiangyang thought for a moment and said, "However, they originally came to Flame Forest Swamp as a group. If they heard some news, the sects would have come to an agreement and gathered together. This is normal. Furthermore, didn't we also want to find someone to cooperate with?" Yan Qinglian was silent for a moment and asked again, "There's still something strange. The fire ape is a rank 5 spirit beast and the lightning beast is even rank 6. They're far from what these Foundation Establishment cultivators can handle. Why did they still walk into the trap in groups? There aren't any core formation seniors among these dead cultivators, right?" This time, Xiangyang also had nothing to say. He nodded and said, "Indeed, they're all Foundation Establishment cultivators. They don't even have a single magic weapon. This is a very strange matter." "Senior sister-in-law, there's only one possibility." Xiaohua had been thinking all along. Only now did he open his mouth and say, "This is the periphery of Flame Forest Swamp." They simply didn't expect that the fire ape and lightning beast would suddenly come out from Flame Forest Swamp and couldn't dodge in time. Or maybe they weren't going for the fire ape at all. When they collided like this, they were caught off guard. Shui agreed and said, "It should be so. Even I didn't expect Xiaolang to refine a magic tool. The fire ape also came for this, so they must have encountered them." Looking at the remnants of the ground, Xiangyang felt a burst of lingering fear in his heart. Just a moment ago, he was still full of ambition and wanted to fight for his lifespan. But when he saw so many cultivators who weren't inferior to him being trampled on like this, his confidence couldn't help but be extinguished by a lot. "If we didn't leave just now," Yan Qinglian also felt lingering fear and said, "I'm afraid it would have been extremely dangerous." Although his confidence was extinguished by a lot, Xiangyang's state of mind was calm again. He glanced at Yan Qinglian and said, "Since it was dangerous, we shouldn't get involved. Junior Marshal Brother shall pass the news of the lightning beast to Marshal Uncle Zhenyi. As for whether or not he can obtain the lightning beast's core, it's not something we can consider. Your husband will accompany you to see the sea." Yan Qinglian smiled happily and slightly shook her head. "Actually, after Master told me about the lightning beast, I already went to check the ancient records of Sun Lei Palace. As early as several tens of thousands of years ago, there were records of the lightning beast appearing in Feng He. Even if Junior Marshall's sister Shui didn't say it, I would have gone with my husband. Wife. Xiangyang reached out and held Yan Qinglian's hands, saying very softly, "You went to Xinlei Palace only to say goodbye to Senior Marshall's sister. I didn't expect that you actually went to check the ancient records. Although I also want to travel freely with my husband, but we have a chance to spend more time together. Why not give it a try?" Yan Qinglian said softly again, "With Junior Marshall Brother Zhao's magic tool, we can know the whereabouts of the fire ape, and our lives won't be in danger." Chapter 1871. Xiangyang shook his head. "What I want is the Thunder Beast's core, not the fire ape. Junior Brother Zhao's magic tool is useless." Yan Qinglian's heart was distressed. She understood that Xiangyang didn't want her and Xiaohua's group to be implicated in this matter and lose their lives easily. Thus she said tenderly, "I'll listen to my husband. If my husband says we're going to Guihe, we'll leave Flame Forest Marsh immediately." Seeing that his sister-in-law had decided, Xiaohua glanced at Shui. The two of them also nodded inwardly. However, at this moment, two divine senses swept over from the direction of Flame Forest Marsh and locked onto the four of them. Humph. Xiaohua frowned and looked impatiently in that direction. He was already in a bad mood. How could he not be annoyed when he was locked onto by someone's divine sense? Hee, fellow Taoists, my master has already warned you not to approach Flame Forest Marsh. What? Are you not going to listen to a golden core cultivator? Not long after, two Foundation establishment middle stage old men flew in front of them. They glanced at everything on the ground and sneered. "We don't dare. Fellow Taoists, we're preparing to leave now." Xiangyang didn't want to be meddlesome and cupped his hands. "You're a disciple of Imperial Thunder Sect?" The old man on the left asked. "That's right. I'm Xiangyang from Myriad Thunder Valley. This is my wife and two junior brothers." Xiangyang nodded. "Yes, I'm Yu Miao. This is I's junior brother Chan Xinyan." The cultivator on the left cupped his hands. Greetings fellow Taoist Yu and fellow Taoist Chan." Seeing that the two's attitude had returned to friendliness, Xiangyang cupped his hands in greeting. Yu Miao smiled and returned the greeting. "Since you're a disciple of a famous sect and you're so sensible, I won't make things difficult for you. You only need to take out the things that don't belong to you from your storage pouch. As for my master's side, I'll talk to him. I will take the initiative to ask the four of you to leave." "What?" Xiangyang was stunned. Then he sneered. "Fellow Taoist Yu, what do you mean? You don't understand what I mean." Another cultivator by the name of Chan Xingyan shouted out rudely. "My master has already warned all of you. All of you had better hurry to Flame Forest Marsh. According to my master's orders, all of you will die here. Since my senior brother is merciful and has let you all go, why don't you all hurry up and bring the medicinal pills, jade slips, and other things over? If I don't take it, are you two going to attack me?" Xiangyang was so angry that he laughed. "You're just a cultivator from the Five Elements sect. How can you be more arrogant than my Imperial Thunder sect?" How about the Imperial Thunder sect? I was prepared to let you go for the sake of the Imperial Thunder sect. What's wrong? Just you, a brat who just entered middle stage Foundation establishment. Want to make things difficult for us?" Chan Xinyan smiled coldly and said, "If you don't wish to perish here, hurry up and take out the thing." Xiangyang looked at Yan Qinglian, but his gaze passed over her head. Xiaohua nodded slightly. Seeing Xiaohua nod, Xiangyang's heart calmed down. He shouted at Xiaohua and Shui, "You all stand to the side and guard carefully. Watch how I deal with these two arrogant people." "Yes, we will follow senior brother's orders." Xiaohua reached out his hand. Dozens of fireball talismans were held in his hand. He looked very guarded. Shui understood and also took out her yellow talismans. Seeing Xiaohua take out the fireball talismans, Xiangyang was secretly happy. He also clapped his hands. A one-zhong long spear was actually held in his hand. Not to mention the others, Xiaohua was first stunned. Since he became Helplessness's disciple, he had never seen his eldest brother use a celestial device. This was the first time he saw Xiangyang take out his handy celestial device. Although Xiaohua had never guessed what Xiangyang's celestial device looked like, when he saw the long spear, he instantly understood why helplessness scolded him so harshly at the life and death temple outside the racing thunder field, accused him of not doing his job properly, and hated him for using martial arts to defeat Yin Xiefeng. It turns out, Xiangyang also has martial skills. Sure enough, Xiangyang held his magic tool, Thunderstrike, in his hand. He raised his eyes and looked at Xiaohua. There was some helplessness in his eyes. He shook his hand and shouted, "Eat Eye's spear." Under the urging of his transcendence energy, the spear was like lightning. Threads of lightning surged out from the spear shaft. Following Xiangyang's spear move, it flashed with thunderbolts and shot towards Yu Yuemiao. Yu Yuemiao laughed loudly and said, "Thy transcendence energy is only as a Watch Eye's methods." As he spoke, he clapped his hands. A large alms bowl was held in his hand. Under the urging of his transcendence energy, a misty splendor gushed out from the alms bowl. It was really like a fountain. "Rise," Yu Yuemiao lightly rebuked. The spell in his hand changed. That splendor flew out with his hand gesture. It slightly stagnated a few feet in front of him. Soon after, it rotated and formed a thin layer about 1 zhang in circumference, like a shield. Pung, a muffled sound was heard. Xiangyang's spear tip had hit this layer of light curtain. A burst of crackling sound was heard. The light purple electric light quickly covered the entire light curtain. The entire light curtain shook in an instant. Hee, can I's eyesight be fake? You really are a brat who just entered the middle stage of foundation establishment. Yu Yuemiao laughed sinisterly. The spell in his hand changed again. The splendor in the alms bowl condensed into the shape of ice thorns. They flew towards Xiangyang from the left and right. Xiangyang brandished his spear. Like a dragon drinking water, lightning flashed from the left and right, respectively hitting the ice thorns flying towards him. But in the instant that the ice thorns were hit, they suddenly trembled and unexpectedly split into two. They dodged the lightning and rushed towards Xiangyang's body. This is bad. Xiaohua watched the battle from the side and slightly frowned. He didn't know if Xiangyang had a defensive magic tool on him. However, just as Xiaohua started to worry, Xiangyang's body unexpectedly flipped in midair. He extremely nimbly dodged the ice thorns. Although his skill couldn't compare to Xiaohua's, it was absolutely impressive. So when eldest senior brother fought with me, he still held back a few moves. Xiaohua laughed and immediately looked towards the battle between Yan Qinglian and Chan Xingyan. In Yan Qinglian's hand was a horsetail whisk. He didn't know what material it was made of, but it actually contained the power of lightning. Every time she waved it, traces of lightning would scatter like raindrops. Chan Xingyan was unable to withstand it. And Chan Xingyan was just like his name, he had a fire attribute physique. That magic tool was even more strange. It was like a rock, except that the rock was completely red, and there were crimson flames lingering on it. Every time Chan Xingyan used his magic to smash it, Yan Qinglian would feel a suffocating heat pressing down on her, causing her to feel extremely uncomfortable. "Go!" Yan Qinglian shouted. Like swinging a horse whip, she swung the horsetail whisk slightly above her head and swung it towards Chan Xingyan. Dozens and even hundreds of tiny lightning bolts flew towards Chan Xingyan. Chan Xingyan hated these tiny lightning bolts the most. He waved his hand and a thin flame flew out, forming a wall of fire. He wanted to block the lightning bolts in front of him, but the magic that he condensed from his magic power couldn't compare to the lightning bolts of the magic tool. After dozens of lightning bolts passed, the wall of fire immediately disappeared without a trace. Chapter 1872. Quick! Chan Xingyan had no choice but to throw out the stone in his hand. The raging flames and the aura of the artifact destroyed all the lightning. However, just as Chan Xingyan waved his hand and was about to retrieve the stone, he saw a weak flash of lightning under the stone. It quickly and violently charged into Chan Xingyan's arms. Oh no! Chan Xingyan's spiritual will swept across, and he immediately knew that this lightning wasn't real lightning. It was a strand of Yan Qinglian's horsetail whisk. Yan Qinglian had concealed it within the lightning and shot it over, avoiding his defenses. Chan Xingyan did not dare to be careless and hurriedly activated his spiritual power, activating the defense around his body. With a Z sound, lightning flashed under Chan Xingyan's armpit, and then the light was extinguished. That lightning actually broke through his defense and shot straight into his Taoist robe. Ouch! Chan Xingyan forcefully twisted his waist and dodged the lightning. There was already a scratch on his Taoist robe. How dare you! Chan Xingyan was enraged. The mana in his body surged, and the rock in his hand instantly lit up with a few feet of fire. A wave of hot air once again filled the entire area. Go! Following his angry roar, that rock flew towards Yan Qinglian like a shooting star. Seeing the power of Chan Xingyan's artifact increase, Yan Qinglian's horsetail whisk did not dare to meet it head-on. Her figure suddenly flew away, and actually used the hibernating lightning escape to dodge to the side. This dodge was so fast that it shocked Chan Xingyan. Lightning escape? He could not help but shout out. I want to see if your lightning escape is faster or eyes flowing fire is faster. Chan Xingyan pointed his finger, and the artifact, flowing fire, followed behind Yan Qinglian like a shadow. It did not stop attacking. Haha, senior brother, let I help you vent your anger. Compared to Chan Xingyan's stalemate, Yu Miao seemed to be having a much easier time. He even had the upper hand. After all, Xiang Yang's mana was much weaker than Yu Miao's, and it was a contest of immortal treasures. Naturally, Xiang Yang couldn't win. Seeing that Chan Xingyan was defeated by Yan Qinglian, Yu Miao laughed heartily and tossed the alms bowl into the air. As it spun, the mouth of the alms bowl was pointed downwards and a ray of light like water sprayed down like a waterfall. Before the ray of light landed, the sharp spirit qi rushed towards Xiang Yang like a sharp knife. Xiang Yang brandished his spear, and lightning danced in front of the water light. However, it only lasted for a moment before it was broken through by the water light. Xiang Yang was horrified, and his figure rapidly retreated in the direction of Xiaohua, while Xue was already some distance away from Xiaohua. Why are you still here? Retreat. When Xiang Yang saw that Xiaohua was still behind him, he unconsciously became furious and berated him. However, when he berated Xiaohua, there was actually a strange expression on his face. Damn it, eldest senior brother. Can't you act a little better? Don't let others see through you. Xiaohua saw the strange expression on Xiang Yang's face and couldn't help but complain. However, at the same time, he gave Xiang Yang a thumbs up. He had been standing still all this time, because he wanted Xiang Yang to lure Yu Miao to his side. Haha. Since you don't want to leave, then don't leave. When Yu Miao saw Xiaohua's realistic fear, he unconsciously felt great. He didn't hold back any of the mana in his body, and poured it all into the alms bowl's immortal treasure. Don't. When Xiaohua saw the water light rushing towards him, he waved his hands and made a big fuss. The dozens of fireball talismans in his hand had already been thrown out. Rumble, rumble, rumble. A series of loud noises rang out, blocking the water light, the alms bowl, and Yu Miao. When he saw Xiaohua throw out the fireball talismans, Yu Miao almost laughed out loud. This was precisely the yellow talisman that qi-refining cultivators were most adept at. It was also the natural method to restrain his water-type magic tool. However, could yellow talismans compare to magic tools? However, when he saw the dozens of fireball talismans, although disorderly, there was an order to them. It was as if they were controlled by divine sense. Yu Miao couldn't help but feel strange in his heart. However, just as this strange thought arose, the numerous fireball talismans collided with each other and exploded around his body. The might of those top-grade fireballs really scared him. Damn it, Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples are really rich and overbearing. Yu Miao couldn't help but curse. Unfortunately, before he could finish cursing, he saw a faint silhouette rush in front of him amidst the chaos caused by the exploding fireballs. Lightning evasion? This guy's mana isn't good, but he can actually use lightning evasion? Ouch. Yu Miao obviously thought that the silhouette was Xiang Yang. However, when he saw clearly, he couldn't help but be astonished and couldn't help but cry out. However, when he saw that Xiaohua was actually holding a worn-out spear shaft in his hand, he laughed again. Are you kidding me? Senior martial brother uses a long spear. This junior martial brother? How could it be worn out? He's using a spear shaft. Soon after, he unhurriedly hooked his finger. From the distant alms bowl, a stream of water light flew over. In the instant Xiao Hua extended his hand to stab the spear shaft, a shield appeared in front of him. However, before he could peacefully look for Xiang Yang's traces, he heard a crisp kacha sound. That shield was unexpectedly shattered by Xiao Hua's spear, and specks of water light scattered in all directions. Demonic tool? Only now did Yu Miao see the true appearance of the demonic spear shaft. He couldn't help but be greatly alarmed. He hurriedly waved his hand, and a protective spell immediately blocked the front of the demonic spear shaft. At the same time, he hurriedly released the pressure of the foundation establishment stage in an attempt to firmly suppress Xiao Hua. Unfortunately, at this time, Xiao Hua was already close to him. Xiao Hua smiled strangely and slightly opened his mouth. A stream of green and red brilliance was spat out from his mouth. Although his body was already unable to move under the pressure, once the execution dream came out, an immeasurable amount of karmic firepower was born. That kind of terrifying throbbing far surpassed the power of the pressure. Yu Miao's heart shrank, and at the same time his mana also stagnated. In the end, Yu Miao was still a middle foundation establishment stage cultivator. He hurriedly used the 5 elements sex secret technique, and barely managed to circulate his mana. His body wanted to retreat, but no matter how fast he was, he couldn't be faster than the execution dream flying sword. He could only see a brilliance flickering at Yu Miao's throat. The green and red sword light entered, and then disappeared without a trace. Following that, Yu Miao's corpse fell into the air, and that alms bowl-like magic tool also stopped in midair. Senior brother? Seeing that Yu Miao had actually fallen, Chan Xingyan almost didn't dare to believe his eyes. Although Xiao Hua's attack was not as fast as lightning, it was still completed in a few breaths. Chan Xingyan only saw Xiao Hua throw out the fireball talisman in a panic. Then, when the flames of the fireball dissipated, Xiao Hua was already in front of Yu Miao. Following that, Yu Miao fell from midair. As for how he died, Chan Xingyan didn't even see it clearly. Fellow Taoist, don't leave either. Yan Qinglian was overjoyed. She didn't hold back on the horsetail whisk in her hand. 10 slender lightning bolts split into 4 and shot towards Chan Xingyan from different angles. You want to keep this Taoist here? Don't even think about it. Chan Xingyan didn't continue to fight. He once again activated his mana, and the flowing fire was like a huge fireball. It instantly extinguished the lightning bolts, and a blank space appeared. Chan Xingyan didn't say another word. His body flew out of the blank space and flew towards the direction of the Flame Forest Mountains. Haha, you actually want to compete with my Imperial Thunder Sect's disciple in flying. Yan Qinglian laughed loudly. She used the hibernating thunder escape technique, and caught up to Chan Xingyan in an instant. Her horsetail whisk struck out again go. Chan Xingyan didn't continue to fight. He still used the same move. The flowing fire retreated and blocked Yan Qinglian. However, just as he was about to increase his speed again, he suddenly realized that right in front of him, the Qi refinement disciple who killed his senior brother was actually blocking his path. How did he get here? Chan Xingyan was shocked. Without hesitation, he released his aura. You really don't have to leave, Xiao Hua said sincerely. Following which, his physical body trembled. A 200-foot phoenix celestial body appeared above his head, completely blocking the aura. At this moment, the phoenix celestial body was slightly different from before. Previously, there was a cold light in its phoenix eyes that looked down on the world. However, that cold light was completely emotionless. It was completely indifferent. At this moment, there was a trace of emotion in those phoenix eyes. It seemed to be mocking. Bloodline of the true spirit. Chan Xingyan was surprised. However, his movements weren't slow either. He hurriedly stretched out his hand, and a crimson-red message talisman flew out. The Flame Forest Mountains are nearby. Chan Xingyan had just laughed coldly when the same scene happened again. With a light rumble of thunder, Xiao Hua, who was just in front of Chan Xingyan a moment ago, actually caught up with the message talisman and crushed it. No way. Chan Xingyan couldn't believe his eyes. Although the speed of the message talisman wasn't especially fast when it was first sent out, The reason why it was a message talisman was because the method of making it was special. It couldn't be easily intercepted by others unless the person's cultivation level was much higher than the person who sent it out. The person's cultivation level was also much higher than the person who sent it out. Go, just as Chan Xingyan was surprised, Xiaohua hurriedly waved his hand. The cloud-suppressing seal instantly appeared from the space. Under the control of Xiaohua's spiritual power, a yellow light shone brightly like the moon. Waves of rumbling sounds could be heard from the cloud-suppressing seal. Magic? Magic treasure? At this moment, Chan Xingyan was in disbelief. He looked at Xiaohua with a strange gaze. His lightning escape was more profound than Yan Qinglian's, and his spiritual power was more profound than his. Could he still be Yan Qinglian and Xiang Yang's junior brother? Even if he was their senior brother, he was still a novelist. Run! This was Chan Xingyan's only thought. But at this moment, the cloud-suppressing seal had already flown in front of him. A feeling that he couldn't escape was born in his heart. Go! Chan Xingyan couldn't suppress his fear. He used a secret technique to control his spiritual power, and tried his best to get rid of this feeling. At the same time, Lu Hua also tried his best to fly towards the cloud-suppressing seal. Pa! As if he was clapping his hands, Xiaohua used a spell. A cloud flew out from the cloud-suppressing seal, and flew towards Lu Hua. With a pung sound, the cloud landed on Lu Hua. The power of the Dharma treasure's mimicry immediately extinguished Lu Hua's flames. As for Lu Hua's original body, that rock, it could not break through the cloud. As the cloud drifted down, the rock also slowly fell. Chapter 1873. Pa pa pa. With another few sounds, the cloud-suppressing seal transformed into a few clouds that floated towards Chan Xingyan's head. Xiaohua's phoenix celestial body also let out a clear cry as it spread its wings and flew towards Chan Xingyan. Seeing that Xiaohua alone was able to fight against both Yan Qinglian and Xiang Yang, Chan Xingyan couldn't help but panic. He clapped his hands and a dozen yellow talismans flew aimlessly in the air. His other hand quietly took out a transmission talisman and sent it in the opposite direction of Xiaohua. Just as he sent out the transmission talisman, his divine sense suddenly sensed that something was wrong behind him. Before he could send out the spell he hurriedly prepared, the dream executioner that killed Yu Yuemiao flew into Chan Xingyan's back. Chan Xingyan was like his senior brother Yu Yuemiao. His eyes were filled with disbelief and hatred as he fell from the sky. Let's go. Xiaohua saw that the crimson transmission talisman increase its speed and fly towards the flame forest mountains. He couldn't catch up and couldn't help but feel hatred. All of this was his meticulous plan, but he still couldn't stop the transmission talisman. Naturally, he couldn't stop the golden core stage Xiang Min from chasing after him. How could he not be angry? Let's go. Xiang Yang, Yan Qinglian, and Shueshue didn't have the time to be shocked by Xiaohua's bravery and gave them a new understanding of him. They hurriedly activated their flying techniques and flew toward Shihuang town. Xiaohua seemed to have a card up his sleeve. With a wave of his hand, flowing fire and the alms bowl were stored in his space. He also took Yu Yuemiao and Chan Xingyan's storage pouches. Then he shot out a few fireballs and destroyed their corpses. Only then did he activate the hibernating thunder escape technique and catch up to Xiang Yang and the rest. Xiang Yang naturally saw what Xiaohua was doing, but he didn't have time to ask. He only focused on activating his transcendence energy, wanting to fly to Shihuang town before Xiang Min arrived. Unfortunately, not to mention that Shueshue and Yan Qinglian's hibernating thunder escape had just reached the entry level. Even if Xiang Yang used all of his magic power, his speed was still insufficient. Just as Xiaohua frowned and wanted to stop the three of them so that he could use the bright thunder escape to fly away, the Buddhist sense that Xiaohua released from far away made a discovery. Stop! Xiaohua said decisively. What's wrong? Xiang Yang was stunned, but he began to slow down. Quick, let's fly in reverse, Xiaohua immediately ordered. Without waiting for the three of them to come to their senses, he slowed down again. With a clap of his hand, a flight talisman was placed on his body. Why is that? Xiang Yang was completely stunned. Husband, don't speak. Fly with junior brother Xiao. Yan Qinglian naturally didn't understand, but she knew that Xiao Hua's actions were reasonable. She hurriedly turned around and flew in front of Xiao Hua using an ordinary flight technique. Xiang Yang rubbed his head and watched as Xue Xue flew to Xiao Hua's side unswervingly. At the same time, he threw out a flying talisman and had no choice but to fly in front of Xiao Hua and the others. Sure enough, in just a short moment, a golden core cultivator's divine sense swept past Xiao Hua and the others, and his divine sense was filled with rage. Xiang Yang and the others knew that Xiang Min had arrived. They did not dare to delay and immediately stopped in midair, waiting for Xiang Min's arrival. In the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Xiang Min flew over at an extremely fast speed. Seeing Xiang Min's flushed little face and eyes that were about to spit fire, Xiang Yang's heart almost jumped out of his chest. Greetings, Senior Xiang. Xiang Yang hurriedly bowed again, and Yan Qinglian and the others followed suit. Did you come from Shihuang Town? Xiang Min's figure suddenly stopped as she asked coldly. Oh yes. Xiang Yang instantly understood what Xiao Hua was thinking, and he hurriedly bowed and replied. Junior wants to bring these two junior brothers to Flame Forest Swamp to gain experience. I've just made some preparations in West Huang Town, and we're heading to Flame Forest Swamp. And, did you see any golden core cultivators or 3 or 4 cultivators above the middle stage of Foundation establishment rushing to Shihuang Town in front of I? Xiang Min asked sharply. Senior Xiang, please no. Junior and the others have not seen any cultivators on our way here. Xiang Yang said respectfully. And, hearing that, Xiang Min did not say anything else and flicked her sleeves and flew in another direction. Seeing that Xiang Min's back was getting further and further away, Xiang Yang and the other two still did not dare to speak. However, their eyes were filled with admiration. If it wasn't for great wisdom and great ability, who would dare to turn around and face the angry gold core cultivator, when they knew that they had just killed the disciple of the gold core cultivator? Furthermore, at this critical moment, Chan Xingyan had hurriedly sent out a transmission talisman, and did not explain the situation in detail. Only when Xiang Min was far away did Xiang Yang dare to send a voice transmission. Junior brother Xiao, what should we do? Continue to Flame Forest Swamp? According to Xiang Yang's thinking, since he had already seen Xiang Min, and said that they were going to Flame Forest Swamp, if he did not go, it would mean that he had a guilty conscience. He could only go and show that he did not know what was going on ahead. Unexpectedly, Xiao Hua opened his mouth and said, Eldest senior brother, Senior Xiang warned us long ago. We wanted to get lucky and go to Flame Forest Marsh to gain experience, but we were still discovered by Senior Xiang. Fortunately, he was kind and didn't say anything. However, this is also a warning. We should obediently return. Xiang Yang was shocked. Of course, Xiang Min had already warned them. Just now he was in a hurry and probably did not think about it. If they could not find the person, how could he not be angry with them? Wasn't this an excuse? If they did not leave now, when would they? Although they did not know what Xiao Hua had discovered, Xiang Yang smiled bitterly and waved his hand seriously. Forget it. We also feel that we should turn back. When Martial Uncle Zhenyi comes, we'll talk about it again. The words Martial Uncle Zhenyi were heavily emphasized. Of course, Xiang Min was a golden core cultivator. Who knew if he had left any clues? Who knew if he could hear the words of the 4 people? Everything was just an act. We will listen to eldest senior brother's instructions. Xiao Hua replied respectfully. Soon after, the 3 of them turned around and flew toward Shihuang Town. At this time, Xiao Hua and the others did not dare to reveal too much of their speed. They only dared to fly at about the same speed as before. Seeing that Shihuang Town was not far away, Xiao Hua and the others were about to reveal victorious smiles on their faces. Xiang Min's divine sense once again caught up to them, and a cold and indifferent voice was transmitted over. You all stop right there. This is bad. Xiao Hua's expression immediately changed. He knew that something was wrong. Xiao Hua looked around, his heart filled with bitterness. If he was alone, he would definitely flee in panic. After all, he had entered Shihuang Town's transportation array. The outside world was so big that he could be transported anywhere. Although Xiang Min had left, he definitely would not do anything to the disciples of Yinyuan City. But now? Xiaohua could only stand there with his hands by his side. He had no other thoughts. Chapter 1874. Xiangyang was also a little uneasy. He looked at Yin Qinglian and Xiaohua, nodded slightly, and also stood in the air. Not long after, Xiang Min flew over with a gloomy expression. He stared at Xiangyang with a sharp gaze. Senior Xiang, do you have any instructions? Xiangyang was afraid that Xiang Min would suddenly attack, so he quickly bowed and said, Junior remembered Senior's instructions and didn't dare to go forward. I want to return to Shihuang town and wait for my martial uncle. Your martial uncle? Which one? Xiang Min frowned and asked. Oh, it's my Thunderclap Palace's martial uncle Zheng Yi. He'll be here soon. Xiangyang said respectfully. Xiang Min's eyes narrowed, as if he was measuring the authenticity of Xiangyang's words. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Xiang Min said, Xiangyang, have you seen I's two disciples? Xiangyang frowned and thought for a moment, then smiled apologetically and said, Are they the two fellow Taoists who went through the teleportation formation with Senior that day? Yes, Xiang Min nodded. Xiangyang shook his head and said, Senior Xiang, I haven't seen the two fellow Taoists since Junior left through the teleportation formation. Do you dare to swear a heart oath? Xiang Min said coldly. Xiangyang smiled without hesitation and said, Of course I can. However, Senior Xiang and the two fellow Taoists, my two disciples sent out a message talisman, but they didn't say anything. Furthermore, I searched for the place where the message talisman was sent from, but I didn't see anything. When I tried to send out another message talisman, the message talisman couldn't be sent out. The more Xiang Min spoke, the angrier she became. Within a radius of several hundred miles, there isn't a fifth person other than the four of you. As he spoke, Xiang Min's face revealed a sinister grin. He waved his sleeves and formed a seal with both hands. A huge suction force formed from his hands and enveloped the four people. The suction force formed a confinement force, trying to imprison Xiangyang and the others. Damn it. Why do I ask so much? Why bother swearing a heart oath? Just search their souls or kill them. Xiang Min said coldly as he lowered his hand. Senior Xiang. Xiangyang was shocked. He slapped his hand and took out the long spear from his storage bag. He pointed it at the sky, wanting to block the spell. Yin Qinglian's expression changed as well. She also took out her Dharma artifact, wanting to block the spell. However, both of them were only at the mid-stage of the Foundation establishment stage. Even with their magical weapons, they were no match for Xiang Min. Xiang Min's confinement technique fell upon them and extinguished all the lightning. Golden Core cultivators, sure enough, their magic power is unfathomable. Xiaohua felt that the heaven and earth spiritual qi around him seemed to have been sucked dry, and he couldn't use any spells. He couldn't help but be greatly shocked. Although his current transcendence energy is already comparable to a late-stage Foundation establishment cultivator, after all, there is still a gap between true essence and true qi. Furthermore, the true essence of a late-stage Foundation establishment cultivator and the golden core of an Aurus core stage cultivator have an intrinsic difference. Looking at it this way, if Xiaohua goes against Xiang Min, there is absolutely no way he can win. What should I do? Xiaohua's mind spun rapidly. He raised his hand, wanting to slap his forehead and use whatever cloud-suppressing seal, whatever execution dream. He himself understood that this Xiang Min has always been unbridled. Just now, he even wanted to make a heart oath to Xiangyang. After a few words, he wanted to directly search their souls. Perhaps after imprisoning the four of them, he wouldn't even search their souls and directly kill them. Yu Miao and Chan Xingyan were his own handiwork. There is absolutely no reason for his senior brother and the others to be implicated. However, just as Xiaohua raised his head, a divine sense swept over from afar. That Xiang Min was also startled and swept his divine sense over. Like I said, without a golden core cultivator, how could my two disciples be killed so easily? Xiang Min's expression was sinister. His figure flew away, abandoning Xiaohua and the others, and flew towards the place where the divine sense swept over. However, although Xiang Min's person left, the confinement technique did not disappear. Xiaohua and the others were immediately confined. Without the support of Transcendence energy, the four of them fell from the sky like rocks. Fortunately, the four of them had ulterior motives and did not fly high. Although the ground was full of rocks, they did not suffer too much damage. Just as Xiaohua's body landed on the ground, he heard a rumbling sound from afar. A multicolored brilliance shone, and there was also the continuous rumbling of thunder. Io, could it be that martial uncle Zhenyi has come? Hearing the familiar sound of thunder and lightning, Xiang Yang's face unconsciously revealed a happy expression. Yan Qinglian also nodded. Listening to the sound of magic and the lingering thunder and lightning, it should be my Imperial Thunder Sect's lightning magic. Didn't Senior Xiang also say that? The one who came as a golden core cultivator. It should be martial uncle Zhenyi without a doubt. Xiaohua was lying on the ground, looking like a dog eating shit. He was in a rather sorry state. Shui, on the other hand, was looking at him with bright eyes. What's there to look at? Xiaohua said with a smile. Is there a flower growing on my face? Hee. Naturally there is a flower growing on your face. A Xiaohua, a little dog-tail flower. Shui's mouth slightly curled up, and her eyes revealed a mischievous look as she said with a smile. Your Langjun is a Xiaohua. Xiaohua's heart swayed, and he said with a smile. However, just as these words left his mouth, there was a boom in his mind, and there was a burst of clear cry. Xiaohua, Xiaohua, Xiaohua. I seem to be called Xiaohua? Shameless, Shui spat and said. You are a big man, what kind of flower is that? Only a woman like me, who is made of water, is a flower, but Xiaohua was in a daze. How could he hear it? Shui saw that Xiaohua ignored her, and anxiously said, Darling Xiao. Xiaohua came back to his senses with a somewhat bitter smile. Looking at Shui's anxious face he said, I know. I fell from an ox, and you are that flower. What do you mean? What did you fall from an ox? Shui was stunned, she obviously didn't know. At this time, Xiang Yang's heart had already calmed down, but his face was still facing Xiaohua, and he said loudly. There is a saying in the secular world, a flower inserted in cow dung. Junior sister Shui, I'm afraid you haven't heard of it before. Ha ha, Shui heard and laughed loudly. Her fragrant breath blew on Xiaohua's face, making Xiaohua feel quite comfortable. Speaking of which, junior brother Xiao, you are very proficient in the secular world. Xiang Yang said with a smile. This is also what I heard when I was young and was practicing martial arts with a martial master. Hee, senior brother. I also didn't expect that your martial arts are so good. Only now did Xiaohua have time to think about Xiang Yang's martial arts. Last time when you exchanged pointers with me, you really went easy on me. However, what made Xiaohua puzzled was that Xiang Yang didn't say anything, and didn't answer a single word. Immediately, Xiaohua realized that Xiang Yang was extremely unwilling to remember the past. Perhaps there were some sad past events. Thinking about how Xiang Yang never asked him about the situation when he was a rogue cultivator, Xiaohua was also speechless. Hee, senior brother, you're right. Senior Xiang's two disciples were Foundation Establishment middle stage cultivators, and they were actually killed in an instant, which senior, such a powerful person? It really makes me envious. I really don't know when I can cultivate to the Jindan realm. Xiaohua quickly changed the topic. When Xiaohua's words came out, not to mention Shui who was originally attached to Xiaohua, even the heartbroken Xiang Yang was very happy in his heart. Yan Qinglian sighed. Junior brother Xiao, don't be distracted. The key for you now is Foundation Establishment. Only by Foundation Establishment can you have a chance to peek into the Jindan realm. Without Foundation Establishment, everything is just empty talk. Yan Qinglian's voice was deliberately rough, as if she was helpless senior sister. You don't need to use master to pressure me. Xiaohua replied with a bitter smile, almost touching his nose with his hand. He will never reach Foundation Establishment. Xiang Min's cold voice sounded, and a pressure that made Xiaohua feel suffocated pressed on the four people at the same time. Xiaohua was shocked, at this moment. Another pressure blocked Xiang Min, and a faint voice sounded. Fellow Taoist Xiang, they are all eyes juniors. How can you make things difficult for them? Soon after, Xiaohua felt his body lighten. Xiang Min's confinement technique was broken. Xiao Hua flipped over and stood up. He flicked the gravel off his body and cried out in surprise, "Grandmaster Zhen, you've finally come." Humph, useless things. Zhen Ye's Taoist robe was a bit messy, but he still scolded without any trace of politeness. 2 Middle Foundation Establishment disciples, 2 Late Qi Refinement disciples, you 4 Imperial Thunder Sect disciples can't even withstand a single move from the 5 Elements Sect's Jindan Realm cultivators. You've really lost face for my thunderous palace. When we return to Imperial Thunder Sect, I'll punish you with 20 years of seclusion. Xiao Hua was overjoyed in his heart, and with a pitiful appearance, he looked at Xiang Min timidly and said in a low voice, "Grandmaster Zhen, can I be punished with 200 years of seclusion?" At this moment, Xiang Yang recovered his honest appearance, and didn't have Xiao Hua's unruliness. He knew that Zhen Yi was mocking Xiang Min, but he still looked at Xiao Hua in confusion. "Oh, why?" Obviously, Zhen Yi was also shocked, and asked curiously, I'm afraid I'll have to cultivate for another 200 years, before I can reach Senior Xiang's cultivation." Xiao Hua stammered and said hesitantly. Zhen Yi came to his senses and laughed loudly. Ha 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 ha. Xiang Yang, Yin Qinglian, and Xue Xue wanted to laugh, but they didn't dare to. If they didn't laugh, they couldn't hold it in. Looking at them like that was really hard to bear. Xiang Min's previously tidy hair was now a bit messy, and her face was already ashen. Her small face was taut and she sneered. "Fellow Taoist Jin, your Imperial Thunder Sect's disciple's cultivation isn't good, but his mouth is quite powerful. This is the first time I've seen a cultivator who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth." "Ha ha ha," Zhen Yi laughed and said. "These are my Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples. Not knowing the immensity of heaven and earth has always been their right. My Imperial Thunder Sect has plenty of disciples like this, and you can see as many as you want." Humph, Xiang Min flung her sleeves and sneered. "Fellow Taoist Jin, look after your disciples well. I'm going to find and kill that hateful murderer. If you're interested in my suggestion just now, you can send me a summoning talisman. And I will naturally look after these 4 disciples well, and not let them be killed for no reason." Zhen Yi had a smile on his face. "I still need to carefully consider fellow Taoist's suggestion. If possible, I'll send you a summoning talisman. Farewell," Xiang Min said, then turned around and left without cupping her hands. Chapter 1875. I won't see you off. Zhen Yi also replied. After Xiang Min's figure disappeared, Xiang Yang and Yen Qinglian walked forward and bowed. "Greetings, Martial Uncle Zhen Yi. If it weren't for Martial Uncle's arrival, we would have died in the hands of this bastard. And get up." Zhen Yi waved his sleeves and let the 2 of them get up. His gaze quickly turned to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua and Xue Xue also hurriedly went forward to make up for it. Zhen Yi waved his sleeves and smiled. "Get up. I was in seclusion to refine pills. Although your message had already reached the sect, I told the boy not to receive any of your messages. Fortunately, when I saw the message, I immediately rushed over. Hee, I really didn't expect that you guys would actually meet Xiang Min." "That's right, Grandmaster Zhen, it's all thanks to you coming. Juniors and the others were inexplicably restrained by Senior Xiang. We really don't know what's going on." Xiao Hua was so innocent. He was even more of a virgin than a pure virgin. "And this matter has nothing to do with you guys." Zhen Yi didn't want to say anything more. He waved his hand and said, "You guys should quickly leave Flame Forest Marsh. This place is no longer suitable for you to gain experience." "Martial Ancestor Zhen," Xiao Hua hurriedly said. Zhen Yi clearly misunderstood Xiao Hua and said with a smile, "Oh Xiao Hua, you passed the information about the lightning beast to this old man. This old man has already discussed it with Xiang Min. There are indeed lightning beasts in this flame forest swamp. You have already completed the task this old man entrusted to you. This old man will not punish you for the previous matters." Xiao Hua cupped his hands and said, "Martial Ancestor Zhen is fair in rewards and punishments. However, I still have something I want to discuss with Martial Ancestor Zhen." "Oh." Zhen Yi frowned and said, "What else do you want?" Xiao Hua glanced at the gloomy Xiang Yang and Yen Qinglian, then told Zhen Yi about Xiang Yang's matter. Ignorant child. Zheng Yi sneered and said. Using the lightning beast's inner core to repair the damaged foundation of the lightning tribulation is just a legend. The repair method you know is just a conjecture created by the lightning controlling sect's ancestors. It hasn't been proven. You guys actually used the incomparably precious lightning beast's inner core to do this experiment. This really makes me speechless. Xiang Yang's expression became even more gloomy. Xiaohua smiled apologetically and said, since it was created by the seniors of our sect, there must be a reason for it. If we don't try it, how can we know it won't work? In eldest senior brother's situation, this is the only way. I'll give it a try. Zheng Yi said indifferently. That's easy for you to say. It's as if the Thunder Beast's inner core is a spirit stone. Xiaohua, do you know what this Thunder Beast's inner core means to this old man? To the cultivators of my Imperial Thunder sect? To the Golden Core cultivators? Xiaohua continued to smile apologetically. Haha, this junior naturally knows that this item is extremely precious to Grandmaster, but to this junior's eldest senior brother, it involves his lifespan. This junior has no choice but to be bold and speak. Xiangyang. In this old man's opinion, it's fine not to use the lightning beast's inner core. Zheng Yi flicked his sleeves and said, this old man saved all of you from Xiangmin's hands, and will send all of you to Western Huangtown's transportation array in a while. This can also be considered as fulfilling my duties as your master. This old man. I'm afraid I can't agree to your request for no reason. Zheng Ye's words were extremely reasonable. Although the lightning beast's inner core involves Xiang Yang's lifespan, Xiang Yang wasn't Zheng Ye's disciple after all. Xiang Yang's life and death really had nothing to do with him. Zheng Yi didn't even bring his own trusted disciples with him this time, so he naturally had the intention to obtain the lightning beast's inner core. It could be seen how important this inner core was to him. How could he possibly share some with Xiang Yang? Even a method to repair one's Dao foundation without any basis? Grandmaster Zhen, this junior's eldest senior brother, only needs a little bit. Xiaohua stretched out his little finger and gestured. Xiaohua. Zheng Yi was slightly angry. This old man can see that you have a promising talent that suits this old man's taste. That's why I said a few words to you. Why do you have no sense of propriety? Even if your master is helpless, he still wouldn't dare to act so rashly. Junior brother Xiao Xiangyang was somewhat discouraged and said in a low voice, we should leave Flame Forest Marsh. We shouldn't delay Marshal Uncle Zhen's matter. Xiaohua looked at his exceptionally loyal eldest senior brother, and said with a smile, eldest senior brother, don't be anxious. Since you're this junior's eldest senior brother, you'll be this junior's eldest senior brother for the rest of my life. This junior won't dare to slack off in the slightest for eldest senior brother. Xiangyang was admittedly a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator, but the rims of his eyes instantly turned red. Xiaohua, this old man knows that you have deep feelings. These words have already been said in this old man's immortal's cave several years ago. Zheng Yi sighed. But this lightning beast's inner core is really important to this old man. This old man can't subdue the lightning beast by himself. Didn't you see? Xiangmin is also eyeing it covetously. Also, to tell you the truth, this old man has made an appointment with several other fellow Taoists. This old man still doesn't know how much I can get, so how can I promise you? Grandmaster Zhen. How can this junior make things difficult for Grandmaster? Xiaohua had already thought it through. He said with a smile. If I can't do something for Grandmaster, how could I dare to say so much to Grandmaster? Oh. What do you mean? Zheng Yi was slightly surprised, but soon after, he asked with interest. Xiaohua waved his hand and took out the Sun Moon Corona from the space. He said with an apologetic smile, Grandmaster, please take a look. This is a magic tool that this junior obtained. It can detect the fire ape's movements. Presumably, Grandmaster already knows that the lightning beast is together with the fire ape. Relying on this magic tool, this junior can point out the lightning beast's movements to Grandmaster. Is that so? Zheng Yi said with a smile. Tell this old man, where is the fire ape right now? Xiaohua said with embarrassment. This magic tool also needs to be within a certain range. Only then will it be effective. If this old man refines this magic tool, then the range, won't it be even larger? Zheng Yi said with a soft smile. Xiaohua bit his lips. Looking at Zheng Yi's calm expression, he said with an apologetic smile, "This junior doesn't know. Junior's refinement method can disappear at any time. Will you have the opportunity to make the refinement method disappear?" Zheng Yi's voice was still calm. Hee, something like drawing water with a bamboo basket. Grandmaster probably won't try. Xiaohua glanced at Xiangyang and the others, whose expressions changed slightly, and said calmly, "Moreover, will Grandmaster give up the opportunity to let my Imperial Thunder sect have a larger share of the Lightning Beast's inner cores? Besides, maybe my eldest senior brother won't even need those inner cores?" Zheng Yi looked at Xiaohua as if he wanted to see through him. Xiaohua met Zheng Yi's gaze and didn't seem to avoid it. He still held the Sun Moon Corona in his hand, as if he wasn't afraid of Zheng Yi snatching it. The place was cold and desolate. Only the mountain wind was still blowing. Myriad Thunder Valley is fortunate to have a disciple like you. After a long while, Zheng Yi praised. Many thanks for Grandmaster's help. Xiaohua was overjoyed and bowed in thanks. All of you follow this old man. Zheng Yi didn't say anything else. He waved his hand and flew up. Chapter 1876. Xiaohua nodded at Xiangyang. Xiangyang also smiled, glanced at Yin Qinglian, and flew up first. Then Yin Qinglian, Xiaohua, and Shui also flew away. Zheng Yi's direction was Flame Forest Swamp, but after flying for a while, he turned back and looked at Xiaohua, who was flying behind Xiangyang and Yin Qinglian, and said in a low voice, "Come here." "Yes, may I know why Grandmaster called for this disciple?" Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. He flew past Xiangyang and smiled apologetically. "It's like this," Zheng Yi said indifferently. "A few years ago, it's already been more than 10 years, right? When you first entered my Imperial Thunder sect and made a mistake in the Eastern Ridge, I learned about the Lightning Beast from a fellow Taoist I was on good terms with. I made an appointment with a few Aurus Core cultivators to search for the Lightning Beast's whereabouts. Unfortunately, because of you, I wasn't able to go, and those fellow Taoists didn't look for me again. When I received your message, I immediately sent a message to those fellow Taoists, and one of them replied to me. They searched for the Lightning Beast but failed, and more than half of them died. This time, since I'm leading the search for the Lightning Beast, I naturally have to invite a few more friends to have some confidence. Previously, Xiangmin's goal wasn't the Lightning Beast, but the Fire Ape. Moreover, he also invited a few fellow Taoists. He suggested that we work together and divide the cores of the Fire Ape and the Thunder Beast equally. This way, he would be able to obtain the Thunder Beast's core for no reason, and I have no use for the Fire Ape's core at all. Therefore, I wasn't willing to work together with him. But the heavens are playing with us. Zheng Yi smiled bitterly. That Fire Ape was actually together with the Lightning Beast. But it's also strange. How can these two kinds of spirit beasts be together? However, now that I think about it, it's because these two kinds of spirit beasts can be together that I can borrow your strength to get an extra 10%. Zheng Yi mocked himself. The Fire Ape's core that you can get an extra share is mine, and I won't give it to you. Moreover, if Xiangyang can't finish using the Lightning Beast's core, you must also give it to me. Of course, I'll earn this share for you in front of everyone. This can also be considered a reward. Great, Xiaohua said with a smile. Everything is according to Grandmaster's instructions. Junior just wants to ask for a bit of the Lightning Beast's inner core for eldest senior brother. Good. It's good that you understand. Listen to this old man's arrangement. Zheng Yi nodded. However, he seemed to have thought of something and said, Moreover, the Lightning Beast and the Fire Ape are both at the Gold Core stage. When we subdued the Lightning Beast last time, a Gold Core stage fellow Taoist fell. This time, the situation is even more serious than before. I can't guarantee your safety. If anything happens to you, I won't take responsibility. This Xiaohua laughed apologetically. Grandmaster, please wait a moment. Xiaohua hurriedly slowed down and discussed with Xiangyang and the others. In Xiaohua's opinion, the three of them didn't need to go. He only needed to accompany Zheng Yi. Unexpectedly, as soon as he spoke, Xiangyang shook his head and said, Junior brother Zhao's words are wrong. Since this is my matter, how can I let you take the risk alone? If you don't let me go, then don't go either. Yan Qinglian smiled and said, My cultivation is higher than your eldest senior brother's. Since he can go, I can go too. Shui was even more resolute. Wherever you go, I will follow. Sigh, these words were not inferior to Fairy Hongxia's. Since you have decided, I will go with you. Forget it. Before Xiaohua could say anything, Zhen Yi sighed. He clapped his hands and took out 2 talismans, handing them to Xiaohua and said, These are the escape talismans that this old man obtained. When you activate your transcendence energy, you can move several hundred feet in a short time. As for how far you can go, it all depends on your cultivation. This old man originally used them to protect himself. You and your fellow senior brothers have such deep feelings for each other. This old man is also moved. However, this old man only has these 2. As for who uses them and who doesn't, it's up to you. Many thanks, Grandmaster. Xiaohua laughed and scratched his head. This is really too easy to distribute. With a flip of his hand, Xiangyang and Shui each had 1. Shui wouldn't let Xiaohua worry because of her shallow cultivation, so she naturally took it. Xiangyang also looked at Yan Qinglian's gaze and smiled as he received it. Damn it, you fellow senior brothers are really strange. He still wanted to see how the 4 of them would decline modestly. Zhen Yi helplessly shook his head. He couldn't understand the deep feelings and silent tacit understanding between Xiangyang and Yan Qinglian, as well as Xiaohua and Shui. Ha! Zhen Yi was shaking his head when he suddenly looked into the distance with a strange expression. What is it, Grandmaster? Xiaohua didn't release his divine sense and asked in a low voice. It's a bit strange. Zhen Yi slightly frowned and said, Let's go and take a look. Xiaohua and the others flew forward with Zhen Yi for a while, and saw the corpses of several cultivators in a low-lying mountainous area. At first glance, these corpses were similar to the corpses of the several dozen cultivators that Xiaohua and the others saw at the beginning. However, after Xiaohua's divine sense swept over them, he understood that although these cultivators had fatal wounds on their bodies or vital parts, there were no traces of their heads being clawed open by the fire ape. Grandmaster Xiaohua was just about to speak when he thought about it. He hadn't been to the front, so how could he see the cultivators injured by the fire ape? He unconsciously stopped. What's wrong? Zhen Yi turned his head and said, Did you discover something? All right, Grandmaster knows, Shui said. Before Disciple entered the sect, Disciple came to Flame Forest Marsh. The fire ape is the most vicious and eats human brains as food. If these cultivators were injured by the fire ape, there would definitely be obvious traces. These cultivators, I'm afraid they weren't injured by the fire ape. Disciple heard Junior Martial Sister Shui mention this before. Xiaohua quickly said. Zhen Yi didn't doubt this and said in a low voice, Xiaohua, try and see if you can sense the fire ape's location. Grandmaster, please wait a moment. Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent and took out the Sun Moon Corona. Under the urging of his magic power, the Sun Moon Corona emitted a brilliant light. After a moment, Xiaohua withdrew his magic power and shook his head. Disciple can't sense it. It shouldn't be nearby. And there's still some distance from here to Flame Forest Marsh. Usually, the spirit beasts that can move around are all low level and definitely wouldn't be so tyrannical. There's no lack of foundation establishment cultivators among these cultivators, so they wouldn't be so incompetent. Could it be that the spirit beasts of Flame Forest Marsh were driven out by the fire ape and lightning beast? Zhen Yi said with a slight frown. Grandmaster Zhen, these people's storage pouches are all gone. Xiaohua was obviously the first to discover this and shouted in extreme shock. Seeing Xiaohua reveal his true nature, Xiangyang was truly somewhat helpless. He glared at Xiaohua and then looked at Zhen Yi, but Zhen Yi merely nodded slightly. Either they were taken away by someone in passing, or they were killed by someone, Xiaohua said fiercely. Clearly, his speculation was leaning towards the former. Let's continue forward. Zhen Yi flicked his sleeves and flew away. Xiaohua looked somewhat unable to bear it. Another dozen or so small sparks flew out and burned these people's corpses. Oh, Xiaohua, you clearly have a guilty conscience from burning them. Could it be that you did it? Zheng Yi looked at the meddlesome Xiaohua and asked curiously. All right, Grandmaster understands. Xiaohua honestly told him about the secular world's matter of being buried for peace. He smiled apologetically and said, Disciple really can't bear to see innocent corpses exposed to the outside world. Admittedly, I've let down my parents and ancestors, but it's also inappropriate for them to be torn apart by those spirit beasts. It's better for them to return to dust and return to earth. What a bunch of nonsense. Zheng Yi shook his head, obviously extremely disapproving of Xiaohua's point of view. With this kind of heart, the path of cultivation won't last long. Hee hee, Xiaohua laughed and didn't say anything more. However, after flying towards the flame forest marsh for the time it took to eat a meal, Xiaohua and the others once again encountered dead cultivators. However, the number of dead cultivators this time was a lot less, only a few. However, the storage pouches that Xiaohua was looking forward to were still missing. Strange, strange. Xiaohua almost stomped his feet. There's definitely something strange about this. But what was strange about it? Xiaohua looked again and again, but didn't discover anything. It was just that the storage pouches were missing. Let's go. Zheng Yi didn't say anything further, and flew towards the flame forest marsh again. At first, the flame forest marsh was similar to what Xiaohua saw last time. It was filled with red gravel and rugged scarlet rock mountain ranges. However, as they flew further in, not only did it become hotter, but the spiritual energy of heaven and earth also gradually began to become tyrannical. Unstable spiritual energy existed from time to time, and there were even some areas that didn't have a trace of spiritual energy at all. This? Why is this situation similar to the Eastern Ridge Medicinal Garden from before? Xiaohua's eyes spun wildly. Could it be that there's another fire origin here? Soon after, Xiaohua had another idea in his mind. I found a fire origin, but I didn't make any progress in my cultivation. Although my bones have been tempered into a scarlet color, I still feel that it's not complete. What if I obtain another fire origin? Would it be beneficial to the light evasion technique? Xiaohua's thoughts were extravagant. The fire origin was an innate object. It was already pretty good that there was even a little bit of it on the Dawn Rain continent. How could there be a second one? Moreover, the 5 elemental origins might not necessarily exist on the Dawn Rain continent. Xiaohua still didn't understand the true meaning of the word origin. That's right, I've been practicing the Big Dipper Divine Fist all this time. It still feels like my bones are being tempered. I don't know what it should be like next and what realm it should be. Xiaohua pondered again. What he didn't know was that as he practiced the Big Dipper Divine Fist every day, the flow that was still tempering his bones had already shown traces of orange within the scarlet red. That orange was originally somewhat similar to red. Even if he saw it with his own eyes, he might not be able to tell the difference. Xiaohua's mouth slightly curled as he was thinking. His body suddenly fell down. The magic power in his body actually froze, and he couldn't circulate it at all. Xiaohua was caught off guard and was very flustered. However, just as he was about to fall to the ground, he felt his magic power flowing again. Not daring to be negligent, Xiaohua hurriedly flew back into the air. Martial Ancestor Zhen. This with Zheng Yi here, Xiaohua naturally humbly asked for guidance, even though he knew a little about the Flame Forest Marsh. This is where the Flame Forest Marsh is extremely strange, Zheng Yi said. There are many places that not only don't have the slightest bit of spiritual energy of heaven and earth, even the magic power in the body can't be used. This gives many cultivators an extreme headache, especially cultivators below the Jindan stage. Chapter 1877. Xiaohua rolled his eyes and smiled apologetically. Why? You're not a golden core cultivator. How would you know? Zheng Yi glanced at him and said, a golden core cultivator's true yuan comes from their golden core. Their magic power can be replenished by the true yuan flowing out from their golden core at any time. Naturally, They are not afraid of a place like this that instantly seals their magic power. This is also the reason why cultivators below the golden core stage rarely come to the inner layer of the flaming forest swamp. If you suddenly lose your magic power above the lava, do you think you'll live or die? This disciple understands, Xiaohua said respectfully. If it was this disciple, I'm afraid I'd be buried in the sea of fire. Therefore, Grandmaster, please take care of this disciple and the rest. Hee, if you're afraid, just give that magic tool to this old man. Zhenyi raised his eyebrows and laughed. Xiaohua lowered his head and looked at the situation below him that was completely different from the outer layer of the flaming forest swamp. He did not reply. Zhenyi did not think it was strange. He smiled lightly and continued to fly forward. At this time, the sky above the flaming forest swamp was filled with rising steam and mist. It was like the surface of a boiling water, blocking everyone's vision. Furthermore, the ground below Xiaohua and the rest were no longer crimson-red sand and mountains. Instead, it was replaced by fire lakes that were tens of zhang, hundreds of zhang, and even hundreds of zhang in size. These fire lakes were densely covered with dark brown magma. From time to time, bubbles of various sizes would surge out from the magma, emitting gurgling sounds as the magma flowed like water. In between the fire lakes, there were sharp stone pillars that stood erect like barbs, covering the entire ground. Those stone pillars were like trees in the forest. This flaming forest swamp really lived up to its name. Thinking back to how Wuxia had explained to him with a smile on her face, Xiaohua could not help but feel a little sad. Her temperament was different from Fairy Hongxia's, and her appearance was similar. Xiaohua then thought back to the sweet moments he had with Fairy Hongxia. Xiaohua could not help but think to himself, I wonder how Li Zongbao is doing now. Looking at his situation, he seems to have seen through the ways of the world. Although his cultivation has improved, his temperament is... Boom! In the distance, there was a tall red mountain range in front of everyone. In front of the mountain range were several hundred zhang wide fire lakes. Suddenly, a pillar of flame shot out from one of the fire lakes and soared high into the sky. Then it fell down like fireworks. When it fell down, some of the fire blocks had already condensed, and some were still in liquid form. The range of the fire was extremely large. After a long while, these things fell into the lake, splashing up a lot of lava. Hiss, Xiaohua sucked in a breath of cold air. He glanced at Xiangyang and said in a low voice, Eldest senior brother, the pillar of fire in front of us that soars into the sky, is it also one of the dangers of Flame Forest Marsh? Xiangyang smiled bitterly and nodded. That's right. This fire pillar was born out of nowhere in the fire lake. Even if one's divine sense were to constantly scan the surface of the lake, one would not be able to detect it in advance. One can only rely on one's vigilance and defensive measures. This is really troublesome. Xiaohua secretly shook his head and looked at Zhenyi. Zhenyi did not say anything and continued to fly towards the fire pillar. In the time it took to eat a meal, Xiaohua had already arrived in front of the red mountain range with Zhenyi. When they flew past the mountain range, Xiaohua saw an endless white fog in front of him. From time to time, there was also a sound similar to that of a cow mooing. Along with the mooing sound, there was also a bright light coming from the distance. It was clearly the same as the fire pillar that soared into the sky just now. Xiaohua carefully looked at the fire lake again. At this time, the fire lake was different from before. Not only was the area of the fire lake several times larger, the color of the lava was also much brighter. What shocked Xiaohua the most was that within the lava, there were actually many lively fire rats. Those fire rats were like small fish in the lake, swimming in the magma. Occasionally, a few of them would jump out and land on the stone pillars on the ground. The magma dripping from the fire rats' bodies dripped down like water droplets, condensing into dark brown beads, while the fire rats revealed their glossy fur. Good heavens, these fire mice are actually not afraid of the lava. Xiaohua's eyes lit up as he thought to himself. The fur of these fire mice must also be precious. Unfortunately, just as Xiaohua thought of this, the fire mice in the fire lake sensed the movements of Xiaohua and the others. Pairs of mouse eyes swept towards the mountain range. Immediately after, there was a series of tung-tung-tung sounds, and almost all of the fire mice drilled into the lava and disappeared. They were really as timid as mice. You all be careful. Take out any defensive yellow talismans or spirit talismans. Zhen Yi indifferently instructed and flew forward again, not even looking at the fire mice in the fire lake. Yes, this disciple understands. Xiangyang obviously also knew the dangers involved. He clapped his hands and took out several high-level defensive yellow talismans, handing them over to Xiaohua and the others. The myriad Thunder Valley was still relatively poor, and Xiangyang also didn't have any spirit talismans. Although Yan Qinglian knew how to refine spirit talismans, she didn't have the materials. Even the invisibility talisman could only be refined with Xiaohua's materials. Xiaohua also didn't say anything. He took the yellow talismans and slapped them on his body. Then he pulled Shui and flew forward with Zhen Yi. That's right, following behind a golden core cultivator, they definitely wouldn't suffer any losses. Unfortunately, just as they flew forward for the time it took to eat a meal, they heard a wong-wong sound coming from midair. Xiaohua had just released his divine sense when a kind of fluctuation even denser and stronger than his divine sense rushed over. It followed Xiaohua's divine sense and rushed into his Naiwen palace. Xiaohua was greatly shocked. The Buddha Sarira above his Naiwen palace immediately flashed with golden light, trying its best to resist this invading fluctuation. Zhen Yi coldly snorted. He flung his sleeve. An array of light flashed, blocking Xiaohua and the others. That fluctuation was immediately blocked outside the light. Xiaohua then heard Zhen Yi say, "These are fire bats. They are very sensitive to divine sense. You actually dared to use divine sense. As expected, the ignorant are fearless." Fire bats? Xiaohua's face was slightly ashamed. When he looked as far as he could, sure enough, within the white fog, a red light flashed. A large scarlet cloud flew over, and within that cloud were fist-sized fire bats. Damn it, Xiaohua was a bit ashamed and angry for his carelessness. He secretly said, "If I wasn't afraid of revealing my strength, would I be afraid of them? Not to mention the dream executioner, even the cloud-suppressing seal can take care of them. Let's go. These fire bats are only second-rank spiritual beasts. If they weren't able to attack divine sense, they would be just like fire mice. As long as you don't release your divine sense, they won't be able to hurt you." Zhen Yi saw Xiaohua's unwillingness and said with a smile. His figure didn't stop at all, and he rushed into the group of fire bats. Sure enough, those fire bats repeatedly attacked the light surrounding Xiaohua and the others. There were even a dozen that rushed toward Zhen Yi. Not to mention the light protecting Xiaohua and the others. That was Zhen Yi's magic. If it was broken by the fire bats, how could Zhen Yi still be worthy of being called a golden core cultivator? And the dozen fire bats that rushed towards Zhen Yi caused Xiaohua to be astonished. Chapter 1878. What do you think? Because when these fire bats rushed to Zhen Yi's body, his body immediately flashed with a faint purple brilliance. That purple brilliance also had tiny lightning bolts, which blocked the fire bats. These were second-grade spirit beasts with the strength of Foundation establishment, but they were actually easily blocked by this brilliance. This doesn't seem to be a defensive yellow talisman. Xiaohua looked at it for a moment and concluded, a defensive yellow talisman's brilliance wouldn't flash so continuously. Moreover, it flashes somewhat in advance. It seems that the brilliance flashed in advance before the fire bats hit it. It's as if this brilliance has a reaction. Xiaohua knew how to refine yellow talismans and spirit talismans, so he was very sensitive to these details. Soon after, he looked at the brilliance protecting him and asked Xiangyang, "Eldest senior brother, the defensive brilliance around Grandmaster Zhen Yi's body is very strange. This little brother thinks it's strange, but I don't know what to pay attention to." Xiangyang didn't find it strange that Xiaohua suddenly had a problem, but he admired Xiaohua for being able to see the difference in Zhen Yi's defensive brilliance. He smiled and said, "Junior brother Xiao, you don't know, but this is the defensive brilliance of a gold core cultivator. It's different from ordinary defensive yellow talismans and spirit talismans." "Defensive brilliance?" Xiaohua immediately said in surprise. What is this thing?" Didn't Grandmaster Zhen Yi say just now? From the gold core stage onwards, all the movement of true essence is initiated from the gold core and nascent soul in the Dantian. This defensive brilliance is one of the divine abilities of a gold core cultivator. A gold core cultivator can rely on the true essence in his gold core to lay down a layer of brilliance around his body, blocking attacks such as magic arts. Hiss, Xiaohua sucked in a breath of cold air. He immediately understood the key point. This defensive brilliance is a gold core divine ability. It's more powerful than all the yellow talismans. It's most effective in dealing with sneak attacks. Xiangyang said again. Moreover, as long as the gold core doesn't break, this defensive brilliance can be used. Unless one's cultivation is stronger than a gold core cultivator, it's hard to break. Xiaohua's face had a bitter smile. He was really rejoicing for himself. Previously, he wanted to sneak attack Xiang Min. Now it seemed that even if his attack power was extremely strong, as long as Xiang Min's gold core didn't break, the defensive brilliance would naturally appear. His sneak attack definitely wouldn't work. Realm. Xiaohua once again understood the pain of helplessness. Seeing the bitterness in Xiaohua's eyes, Xiangyang said a few more words. For cultivators below the Jindan stage, if their cultivation is a bit higher than those of the same stage, they will have the opportunity to kill others. However, the higher the Jindan stage, Yuanying stage, and even spirit-severing stage cultivators, even if their strength is a bit higher than those of the same stage, if they don't have any special abilities, it will be very difficult for them to kill those of the same stage. This protective light is also one of the reasons. I understand. Xiaohua nodded. This is the so-called easy to defeat, but hard to kill. That's right. Xiangyang nodded. Just as Xiaohua was transmitting his voice to Xiangyang, Zhen Yi stretched out both of his hands, and countless faint purple lightning bolts shot out from between his fingers. Like a large lightning net, it spread out for several tens of meters, and enveloped the swarm of fire bats that were charging over. Chirp, 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 chirp. A wave of fire bats' hurried cries rang out. All of the fire bats were surrounded by lightning bolts, and they no longer had the power to fly. They all fainted and fell into the fire lake. Within the fire lake, several hundred fire rats suddenly appeared. As if they had seen a delicacy, they bared their teeth and fought over the fainted fire bats. For a moment, filthy blood splashed everywhere, and small white bones scattered. In a short moment, the fainted fire bats were devoured by the numerous fire rats, and the fire rats quickly disappeared into the fire lake. Hearing the squeaking noises that had just started, followed by an extremely quick silence, Xiaohua's heart throbbed. Of course, if the fire bats were like this, then needless to say, cultivators were even more so. As long as they lost their resistance and fell into the fire lake, they would immediately be devoured by the fire rats, and not even a bone would be left behind. No wonder this flame forest swamp was not a place where ordinary cultivators could come. Seeing Xiaohua like this, Shueshue's face was even more snow-white. Seeing this, Xiaohua reached out and held Shueshue's ice-cold hand. Shueshue's hand was actually trembling, as if she was extremely scared. Sigh, I was still a bit careless. Xiaohua said inwardly. Although Shueshue is a female cultivator, she is still a girl after all. These fire rats, fire bats, and other disgusting spirit beasts have an innate fear. Wife, why don't we turn back? Xiaohua transmitted his voice. The word wife caused Shueshue's face to redden. She forced a smile and said, This is related to Senior Marshal Brother's life. This lowly concubine should follow Xiaohua. We can't delay important matters just because this lowly concubine is scared. Moreover, is there any place in this world that is safer than Xiaohua? Xiaohua's hand tightened to express his comfort. He then looked at Yin Qinglian, who was also holding her hand. Men, although sometimes their cultivation was insufficient, at crucial moments, they would still rise to the occasion. We'll go over there and wait. Zhen Yi easily killed the fire bat in one fell swoop. He pointed his finger at the fire lake in front of them to the left. In the fire lake, there was a small mountain peak that rose from the magma, and it was several hundred feet tall. When Xiaohua and Zhen Yi landed on the mountain peak, they could clearly see that the mountain peak was flat. The mountain peak was several hundred feet tall, and there weren't too many protruding rocks. It was very suitable for resting. When Zhen Yi landed on the mountain peak, he didn't say anything else and closed his eyes to rest. When Xiaohua and the others saw this, they didn't dare to say anything. Yan Qinglian accompanied Xiangyang, and Shueshui accompanied Xiaohua. They each found an empty place and sat down cross-legged. With Zhen Yi and the others around, Xiaohua didn't dare to refine the fire marrow flame crystal in his meridians. He could only continue to circulate his heart technique, and let the fire attribute spiritual qi of heaven and earth from outside his body enter his body, refining it bit by bit. Xiaohua hadn't used this method for a long time. When he picked it up now, he felt as slow as an old ox plowing the field. After a long time, Xiaohua gradually became impatient. This method of drawing spiritual qi into his body was too slow. The hard work he did this time was far inferior to the refining of the fire marrow flame crystal. Sigh, Xiaohua sighed. His gaze looked at the fiery red and pale white around him, and he closed his eyes again. This time he truly calmed his heart and circulated the prairie fire heart technique, bit by bit, guiding the tyrannical fire attribute spiritual qi into his meridians. Then he circulated the fire attribute spiritual qi in his meridians, refining it bit by bit according to the heart technique. Along with the formation of strands of true qi, Xiaohua also entered a rather empty state. It seemed to be devoid of joy and sorrow, yet it also seemed to be devoid of desires and desires. The refinement of true qi was nothing more than a natural reaction. The meticulous refinement process allowed Xiaohua to have a deeper understanding of the prairie fire cultivation method, and the subtleties of the cultivation method were gradually revealed. The so-called prairie fire heart technique, as the name implied, took the meaning that a single spark could set a prairie ablaze. This cultivation method was admittedly crude, but its fine details were marvelous. Unfortunately, Xiaohua only valued the meridians of this cultivation method, and had little understanding of this cultivation method. He only believed that it was like an old ox swallowing peonies, pouring a huge amount of fire marrow flame crystal into it. Xiaohua's spiritual qi had increased, but this increased spiritual qi could be practiced by any foundation establishment cultivation method. It was far from the essence of the prairie fire heart technique. At this time, under Zhen Ye's deterrence, Xiaohua used the most basic method to circulate the heart technique for the first time. Under meditation, he actually comprehended the essence of the cultivation method. Unknowingly, 10 days had passed. Although Xiaohua's cultivation didn't make much progress, what he gained was far from simple. Previously, this young master was wrong. Xiaohua came out from his meditation and sighed inwardly. Every cultivation method has its own uniqueness. If I don't carefully comprehend it and only focus on the speed of refining spiritual qi, I'll be neglecting the essentials. Let's not talk about the prairie fire heart technique for now. After I reach foundation establishment, I'll have to practice the cultivation method given by master first. And speaking of foundation establishment, the fire marrow flame crystal has already been used up. What about the cultivation after foundation establishment? Directly refining spiritual qi of heaven and earth will admittedly allow me to comprehend the cultivation method and lay a good foundation. But what about after that? Will I still have to use other methods? Xiaohua thought again. Since I've arrived at Flame Forest Marsh, this young master can't help but look around to see if I can get some more fire marrow flame crystals for foundation establishment cultivation. Thinking of this, Xiaohua frowned slightly. In addition, these 10 days of cultivation, admittedly I've comprehended a lot, but it's also somewhat inappropriate. This prairie fire heart technique's refinement of fire attribute spiritual qi is simply slower than when I was at the first or second level of qi refining. Moreover, there's actually some stagnation in the circulation of the cultivation method. It's far from the smoothness of refining fire marrow flame crystals in the past. If I hadn't calmed my heart and comprehended it today, this young master wouldn't have been able to detect it. What's going on? Right at this moment, a crimson communication talisman flew over from the fog in the distance and landed directly in front of Zhen Yi. Zhen Yi opened his eyes and reached out to grab the communication talisman. He scanned it with his divine sense and laughed. Hee hee, these old farts have finally come. As he spoke, he clapped his hand. The communication talisman whistled again and flew away in a different direction. Immediately after, Zhenyi stood up and looked around. He clapped his hand and took out another communication talisman. He laughed and said, "Now is the time to bargain with this little thief." Soon after, the communication talisman flew into the air and made a turn in the air, flying in another direction of Flame Forest Marsh. Seeing Zhenyi stand up, Xiaohua and the others didn't dare to continue cultivating. They also stood up and looked in the direction of the communication talisman, quietly waiting for the arrival of Xiangmin and the cultivators that Zhenyi had invited. The four of them were somewhat nervous. After all, the people who had come were all Golden Core Realm seniors, and what Xiangyang wanted was tantamount to pulling a tooth from the tiger's mouth. They didn't know if Zhenyi could snatch an extra portion from their mouths. Flame Forest Marsh was so big, and the cultivators who came here to gain experience were far from the likes of Xiangmin and Zhenyi. In the other direction where the two communication talismans flew, above a huge fire lake several hundred kilometers away, a huge fire lion with countless tiny flames lingering around its body flew over from the distance. On top of this fire lion sat a late Foundation Establishment Realm old man, with an ordinary build and a red face. This old man's eyes were slightly closed, and the half-foot beard under his chin was very conspicuous. Chapter 1879. When the cultivator rode the fire lion to the fire lake, he patted the fire lion's forehead. The fire lion docilely stopped and shook its head. It took a deep breath, and a large amount of fire spiritual energy entered the fire lion's mouth. Then, the fire lion raised its head and let out a long roar. The fire rats that were scurrying around in the fire lake immediately disappeared into the lava, and did not dare to show their faces again. Hee, the cultivator opened his eyes and looked at the fire lion lovingly. He stroked the fire lion's mane, and got down from the fire lion's back. He released his spiritual sense and looked around carefully. He frowned and muttered, "This should be the place. Why can't I see anything? Strange." Then the cultivator seemed to be unwilling to give up. He walked around for a long time within 1,000 feet radius. When he returned to his original place, the doubt on his face disappeared. He smiled and said, "This is the secret technique of the seniors in my sect. If I can understand it, I'm afraid I'm at the gold core stage." As he said that, he clapped his hands and took out a red talisman. Just as he was about to activate his spiritual power, he suddenly raised his head and looked to the right. Not long after, a dozen or so peak chi condensation disciples arrived from the direction the cultivator was looking at. When they saw the cultivator from afar, their faces were filled with reverence as they hastily flew over. When they got closer, the dozen disciples all bowed and greeted. "Greetings, Martial Uncle Miao Jun. Get up, everyone." The late-stage Foundation Establishment cultivator called Miao Jun waved his hand and nodded. "Did you all bring the things?" "Martial Uncle Miao, we followed martial ancestors' instructions and brought the things." A slightly older disciple cupped his hands and said, "Hee, Martial Uncle Miao, don't worry." Another disciple beside this disciple smiled and said, "Although there are cultivators who come here to train, they are all on the other side. This place is very remote, and there aren't any powerful spiritual beasts. It's not suitable for training." You're right, but we can't let our guard down. This concerns the secret of the rise of the spirit husbandry sect. If anything goes wrong, we will all be sinners of the spirit husbandry sect." Miao Jun sneered. "I understand." The disciple's expression changed slightly and he quickly bowed. "Yes." Miao Jun nodded and said, "You've worked hard. When this matter is settled and our black spirit sect obtains the mystery, I'm afraid your cultivation will also improve. At that time, the Foundation Establishment stage will be within reach. Wouldn't that be wonderful?" "Haha, many thanks, Martial Uncle Miao." All the disciples were overjoyed. Seeing that Miao Jun was happy, one of the clever disciples smiled and said, "Previously, the sect sent out a secret order saying that there is a great secret to reaching the Foundation Establishment stage in the vicinity of the Flame Forest Swamp. They only told us to search for it, but didn't tell us what the secret was. After searching for several years, we finally found this place. That's right, that's right. The disciples echoed. What? Are you a little unhappy? Miao Jun's face was cold. Didn't the elders of the sect say that they were unhappy? Didn't he tell you the truth? Disciple doesn't dare. That disciple wanted to flatter, but he had exposed such a big flaw. He hurriedly waved his hand. You have to understand. Foundation establishment cultivators like us can train in the flame forest swamp, but if there are too many of us, how can we not attract the attention of cultivators from other sects? You are peak qi refining disciples, and you are looking for the opportunity to reach the foundation establishment stage. Even if you come to the flame forest swamp, no one will say anything. That's why the elder made such an arrangement. As for why he only told you that there is a secret to reaching the foundation establishment stage, and didn't tell you the specific reason, do you still need me to explain? Miao Jun scolded. Yes, I know. The shrewd-looking disciple from before immediately said. Our cultivation is shallow. If we were to be captured by cultivators from other sects, not to mention the soul-searching technique, I'm afraid that even if we were to survive, we would still have to reveal this secret. The elders' arrangement is to protect us and the secret of the sect. It's good that you know. Miao Jun nodded. Even so, there were many cultivators from other sects who came here a few years ago. Furthermore, the dust-separating beast is getting harder and harder to find. Tell me, if this secret isn't known by others, what other reason could there be? Yes. The disciples didn't dare to refute and could only smile. Let's talk about it again. Miao Jun turned his head again and looked around. He put on a fake smile and said, I also just received the specific news. Even later than all of you. I thought that they were tracking the fire apes and other spiritual beasts that suddenly appeared in the flame forest swamp. I originally wanted to invite some good friends from other sects to come to the flame forest swamp, who knew that the elders had other arrangements. If I really invited my good friends, it would be difficult. Miao Jun and Qian Yiming weren't core disciples of the spirit husbandry sect. They didn't know many secrets in time. Miao Jun's words were obviously to vent his dissatisfaction. The disciples understood in their hearts, but they didn't dare to reply. Let's go. Let's not waste time. Miao Jun activated the spiritual talisman in his hand, which then turned into a ball of exquisite flame. Miao Jun swung his arm and threw it into the air. When the flame landed on the magma of the fire lake, a scarlet radiance flashed. Closely after that, ripples started to spread out from the fire lake. Furthermore, the ripples started to move upwards. In an instant, a huge oval-shaped hole appeared about 100 feet above the lava. Looking from the hole, a mountain that was over 100 feet tall could be seen. This mountain peak was exactly the same as the one Xiaohua and the others were on. They both rose up from the fire lake, but the height was much shorter. Moreover, this mountain peak was covered with many caves, and each cave was guarded by either aura refining or foundation establishment cultivators. Even after Miao Jun led the aura refining disciples into the concealment formation of the mountain peak, a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator flew over without waiting for the big cave behind them to completely recover. Greetings, senior brother Gao Chong. Seeing the cultivator fly over, Miao Jun didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly cupped his hands in greeting. The Qi refinement disciples also bowed and greeted Martial Uncle Gao. Gao Chong scanned with his divine sense and said coldly, Why did you come so late? Yes, Martial Uncle knows. We took something from the sect, and came here through the transportation formation. However, because we wanted to hide it, we took a detour, so the quick-witted disciple was very anxious and hurriedly explained. Gao Chong's expression didn't change. He pointed at a few disciples and said, You take out your identity tablets. Yes. The disciples who were pointed out didn't dare to be negligent and quickly took out their identity tablets respectfully. Gao Chong scanned with his divine sense and nodded. Go and contact your senior brothers and junior brothers. Quickly get to work. Yes, the disciples answered in unison. First, they flew to the top of the mountain together. Then each sent out their summoning talismans. Seeing that the Qi refinement disciples had left, Miao Jun smiled and said, Senior brother Gao, go on your patrol. I'm going too. Wait a moment, Gao Chang said coldly. You still haven't answered the question I asked just now. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for it. Chapter 1880. What? Miao Jun was obviously taken aback. I just asked why you came so late. Gao Chang no longer showed any mercy and asked coldly. I just received a message from the sect and got the talisman to enter and exit. Miao Jun obviously didn't expect Gao Chang to ask such a question and couldn't help but panic. Gao Chang stared at Miao Jun for the time it took to drink half a cup of tea. Then he said, according to the elders' arrangements, you mid-foundation establishment disciples should have arrived here yesterday. Everyone else has already arrived. Even if they were late, they should have arrived by at least an hour. You, on the other hand, are actually late by a day. If it weren't for the fact that the formation needs manpower, this old man would never have let you in. I did have something else to do. I hope senior brother Gao can forgive me. Miao Jun heard Gao Chang's tone soften and hurriedly smiled apologetically. Forgive? Gao Chang glanced at the storage bags in front of Miao Jun and said with a smile, Junior brother Miao, do you think I don't know what you're doing if you don't say it yourself? When the elders issued the sect order, they clearly said that this matter is of great importance. Remember to be cautious and don't get into trouble. Before the sect order, I naturally won't care. You can invite any friends or subdue any spirit beast. That's your freedom, and it's also in line with the sect's intention to conceal it. However, after the sect order, if you do anything strange and use your fire lion to kill other cultivators, then it's your fault. Yes, it's all my fault. Miao Jun was sweating profusely and didn't say anything else. He untied the storage bags from his waist and handed them to Gao Chang, begging, I know senior brother Gao cherishes your friends the most. I saw a few cultivators from other sects who didn't know the severity of the matter and wanted to come here. I was afraid they would ruin the sect's plans, so I cut them off. It's all my fault. Now that I heard senior brother Gao's words, I know I made a mistake. I got these from those cultivators. I'll deal with them. Gao Chang reached out and took the storage bags. He snorted again. Did you deal with the bodies of those cultivators? Miao Jun was stunned and stammered. No. I was afraid I was late and didn't have time to deal with them. Idiot. Gao Chang scolded. Miao Jun argued. However, it was all done by the fire lion, so no one should suspect anything. I'm afraid there are other cultivators behind you, and you can't deal with them in time. Miao Jun said embarrassedly, Senior brother Gao is wise. Go. Gao Chang waved his hand. Miao Jun's heart relaxed, and he clasped his hands and hurriedly flew away. After Miao Jun flew far away, Gao Chang sneered and said, A bunch of idiots. Seeing a storage bag, they're like flies seeing blood, forgetting everything. Yesterday they were in groups, and today they're one by one. It's really unwise. After he finished speaking, he used his divine sense to check the place where Miao Jun opened the magic array. The entire magic array was restored, and a faint red light curtain enveloped the entire mountain peak. It was as if the horizon was red, and this red light curtain even went deep into the fire lake, separating the magma from the mountain peak. After Gao Chang finished his inspection, he didn't find anything wrong, so he flew in another direction. Miao Jun flew far away and landed on a spot on the mountain peak. He turned back and saw Gao Chang flying away and cursed, bad luck. Then he slapped his hand and took out a communication amulet. Under the power of his transcendence energy, the communication amulet flew down the mountain peak and flew into one of the caves. Not long after, another ray of light flew out from the cave, and behind the light was a spirit beast that looked like a fire bird. Miao Jun took the communication amulet and used his divine sense to scan it. The chirping fire bird flew in front of him and landed on his shoulder with familiarity. Miao Jun reached out and took out a spirit pill. The fire bird nimbly took the spirit pill, then flapped its wings and flew up from Miao Jun's shoulder, flying back to the cave from which they came. Naturally, Miao Jun's figure also flew up and followed the firebird into the cave. The walls of the cave were filled with cooled magma, and ripples appeared on the stone walls. There were even some places where the outline of a fire mouse could be seen. The interior of the cave was still hot, but there was no fog. There were no bright flower stones on the stone walls, but there was still a faint red glow. There was a faint sound of wind, but under the flapping of the firebird's wings, it was somewhat unreal. Miao Jun flew behind the firebird, following the path of the cave. The path of the cave was somewhat messy, and there were forks from time to time. Moreover, the forks looked the same, so it wasn't easy to identify. Miao Jun tried to release his divine sense, but it was blocked after passing a foot through the stone walls. Moreover, it was limited inside the cave, and he couldn't go very far. Miao Jun patiently followed the firebird through countless turns, and he didn't know how deep they had descended from the fire lake. When they passed by a stalactite-sized crimson flame pillar, Miao Jun's body unconsciously came to a halt. An inconceivable expression, or perhaps one that he had never seen before, flashed across his eyes. This was a huge space, and it was 1,000 feet wide. The area was even larger, and it was probably thousands of feet wide. Miao Jun was only at a small opening in the stone wall, and there were many more openings like this on the stone wall. Looking at the ground of the space, there was an irregular-shaped altar. The altar was about 10 feet high, and there were many cultivators standing on it. In midair above the altar, there were also many cultivators, and these cultivators were doing different things. The cultivators on the altar didn't have high cultivation, and most of them were at the peak of the qi refining realm. Only a few of them were at the early stage of the foundation establishment realm. They each held a storage bag in their hands, and from time to time, they took out things from the storage bag and placed them on the altar. Then they activated their spiritual power and cast a spell. If the spell was effective, these cultivators took out other things and placed them in other places. If the spell was ineffective, these cultivators took out other things and placed them in their original places. These objects were either oval or flat, and in short, there were different rules. The cultivators in midair above the altar held jade slips that they didn't use, and they stood at different positions. On one hand, they were monitoring the actions of the disciples on the altar, and on the other hand, they were sending their spiritual will into the jade slips, as if they were comparing them. When Miao Jun entered, most of the places on the altar had already been repaired by the disciples of the spirit husbandry sect. A weird-looking pattern had basically appeared on the altar. This pattern was pentagonal, and there were some smooth curves at the edges. In the middle of the curves, there was a pair of wings on its back, and its body was similar to a jackal in the mortal world. However, this jackal's head was huge, and it was more than half the size of its body. Although it hadn't taken shape yet, the ferocity in the jackal's eyes made Miao Jun's spiritual will tremble. Junior Marshal Brother Miao, a mid-stage foundation establishment cultivator, hovered in mid-air with the firebird perched on his shoulder. He called out, "Hurry up and come help us. Our mission is very important. If we're delayed, the sect will punish us severely." "Yes, Senior Brother Shou, I understand." Miao Jun didn't dare to delay, and quickly flew to Senior Brother Shou's side. Senior Brother Shou clapped his hands and took out a jade slip. He pointed to a place about 100 feet to the left and said, "On this altar, there is a formation set up by the ancestors of the spirit husbandry sect. As it has been abandoned for many years, it has lost its effectiveness. However, the spirit husbandry sect still has the materials used to set up the formation, and the entire formation is divided into hundreds of parts. You are in charge of that part, and just make sure that the formation repaired by the disciples matches the one recorded in your jade slip. You don't have to worry about whether it is useful or not." "Yes, I understand." Miao Jun seemed to have some understanding of formations, and immediately understood what Senior Brother Shou meant. However, when he scanned the jade slip in his hand with his spiritual will, he was stunned. He rolled his eyes and said in a low voice, "Senior Brother Shou, the formation in this jade slip seems to be incomplete. Moreover, although I can't see the formation, just a small part of it, from what I can see, it is still very important." Hearing this, Senior Brother Shou's face turned serious, and he said in a low voice, "Junior Brother Miao, I know that you are good at formations, But you don't have to show off in front of me. Moreover, this is the arrangement of the elders. If you don't want to live anymore, I will report this to the elders. Miao Jun's face turned slightly yellow, and he said hurriedly, Senior Brother Shou, I was just saying, don't take it seriously. After he finished speaking, Miao Jun took the jade slip and flew to the place that Senior Brother Shou had mentioned. As he immersed his spiritual will in the jade slip, he guided the disciples on the altar on how to cast the formation. Elder Yuan, this Spirit Awakening 5 Skandhas formation, is a long-lost formation of our Spirit Husbandry sect. Although there is a more complete foundation of the formation here, and we don't have to spend so much effort to do the most crucial things, the incantation to activate the formation is also missing. Wouldn't that be inappropriate? At the top of the altar, there was a cave of about 10 feet on the high stone wall. At this moment, there were 4 Golden Core Realm cultivators sitting cross-legged in the cave. They were all in the later stage of the Golden Core Realm, and their robes were basically the same. Only their voices and smiles were different. A cultivator with a pointy mouth and monkey cheeks asked in a low voice. Elder Zhe. A fat cultivator with a tender face opened his eyes. He was Yuan Feng, one of the 4 great elders of the Spirit Husbandry sect. He said, Elder Zhe, I'm sure you know that the Spirit Husbandry sect used to be a famous sect on the Xiaoyu continent. The Thunder Controlling sect and the Washing Flower sect were all ranked behind the Spirit Husbandry sect. But why is the situation deteriorating? Many disciples would rather join a sect like the Washing Flower sect, which has no religion, than join the Spirit Husbandry sect. Could it be that the spirit beasts of the Spirit Husbandry sect are not attractive enough? The elder Zhe with a pointy mouth and monkey cheeks was Zhe Qipeng. When he heard this, he was slightly angry. Yuan Feng, I asked you about the formation. What do you mean by this? Reverend Ing Su is not here, so you don't have to show off. Chapter 1881. Yuan Feng didn't mind Zhe Qipeng's words. He turned to look at the other 2 cultivators and smiled. I believe Elder Man and Elder Hu also understand what's going on, right? Elder Man's name was Man Yun. He was a cultivator with a long upper body and long arms. There were also white spots on his face. When he heard Yuan Feng's question, he didn't say anything. Instead, he turned to look at the other red-faced old woman. She was the other elder of the Spirit Husbandry sect, Hu Yu opened her eyes, and a cold light flashed through them. She stared at Yuan Feng with her small black pupils and screamed like an owl. Elder Yuan, we know that you are the leader of this operation, and the sect master has instructed us to prioritize the sect. However, you don't have to show off, right? Even if we didn't know about it before, since we are sitting here now, we have already checked the records. My Spirit Husbandry sect was at its peak tens of thousands of years ago, but for some unknown reason, the sect master and elders disappeared overnight. Since then, the Spirit Husbandry sect has been unable to recover, and it has been difficult for us to move forward among the cultivation sects in the Dawn Rain continent. Could this 5 Skandha Spirit Awakening formation be related to the missing seniors? What Elder Hu said is right. Yuan Feng clapped and smiled. I am obsessed with the Tao of formations. After searching through the records of my Spirit Husbandry sect, I finally found an incomplete 5 Skandha Spirit Awakening formation in an old jade pendant. Moreover, from this formation, I obtained some vague information. The disappearance of my Thunder Controlling Sect's seniors should be related to the formation, and it should be related to the Chao's soul essence in the Flame Forest Mountains Lake of Fire. I even found the vague location of the 5 Skandha Spirit Awakening formation in the jade pendant. Humph, Man Yin, who hadn't spoken for a long time, snorted. Needless to say, my Spirit Husbandry sect's seniors died here. I believe Elder Yuan thinks that we have lived for too long, and wants us to follow in their footsteps. Hee, Elder Man, although I have lived for 700 years, I still haven't lived enough. I still want to live for 2,000 years. Yuan Feng didn't find it strange and said with a smile. Nascent soul? Man Yin, Zhe Qipeng, and Hu Yu were all shocked. They looked at each other, and their gazes were filled with confusion. Why do you say that? Hu Yu continued. Could it be that Elder Yuan has some secret method? Ha ha ha, Yuan Feng laughed loudly. He stroked his beard and said, Of course there is. Otherwise, why would I be willing to ask the sect master to make such a big move? Not only had they searched for the location of the 5 essences awakening formation more than 10 years ago, they had also sent out many disciples to deceive others. It is only now that I am confident that I dare to reveal this secret method to everyone. Hee, Elder Yuan. Shi Qiping smiled and said, of course there is a way, but since it can even annihilate a nascent soul cultivator, how can late gold core cultivators like us provoke it? I still have a lifespan left, waiting for the final moment to form my nascent soul. Elder Jia, there's no need to lie in front of an immortal. The 4 of us are all in the late stage of the gold core realm, and have a lifespan of about 700 years. If we can reach the nascent soul realm, why would I take such a big risk? Yuan Feng was still smiling and said, even if something happened here tens of thousands of years ago, it doesn't mean that it will happen again tens of thousands of years later. As he spoke, he stretched out his hand and took out several jade slips, which flew in front of the 3 of them. Everyone, please take a look. This is the mental cultivation method that I have finally found after decades of searching. Yuan Feng seemed to say casually. Everyone took it and immersed their divine senses in it. However, in just a moment, the 3 of them suddenly raised their heads, their eyes flashing with disbelief. Who you actually exclaimed. Spirit-devouring mental cultivation method? Wasn't this lost long ago? Even beast cultivators don't necessarily have this mental cultivation method. I understand now. Shi Qiping slapped his forehead and looked like he had suddenly realized something. Elder Yuan went out to train 100 years ago. I'm afraid it was for this, right? Hee, that's right. I'm grateful that Elder Jia still remembers the past. Yuan Feng nodded and said, the heavens didn't let me down. I finally found this in a small beast cultivator family in Hung Country. Sigh, but it's a pity. This mental cultivation method. Shi Qiping was stunned and immediately immersed his divine senses in the jade slips. Sure enough, in the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the 3 of them looked a little pale. They raised their heads and smiled bitterly. Elder Yuan, aren't you teasing us? This incomplete mental cultivation method can't be used at all. Everyone? If it can't be used, why would I waste so much effort? Yuan Feng said with a smile. The 3 of them looked at each other, as if they didn't quite understand. Just as the impatient Huyu was about to ask, Shi Qiping suddenly had a flash of inspiration and said in surprise, could it be? Elder Yuan is talking about spirit beasts? Great! Yuan Feng clapped his hands and said, Elder Jia finally understands. Huyu immediately shook his head and said, but although the spirit beasts of us Jelly Spirit Sect Golden Core cultivators are different from the spirit beasts of beast cultivators, they still have a mental connection with the cultivators. Such a dangerous mental cultivation method. If there's an accident, our cultivation will also be damaged. Mannion frowned and sent his divine senses into the jade slips again. He closed his eyes for a moment and said, in my opinion, Elder Yuan's idea is quite feasible. Elder Man, please speak. Huyu hurriedly asked again. Elder Hu, please take a look. This spirit-devouring mental cultivation method lacks a way to erase the spirit imprint in the spirit essence. This thing is basically the complete mental cultivation method, so we don't need it. But without this step, we can't recklessly devour the spirit essence of ancient beasts. That will only cause our fragile souls to be destroyed directly and turn us into idiots. However, if our spirit beasts devour the spirit essence with the spirit imprint, the spirit beast spirit will naturally erase the imprint in the spirit essence and even devour it. When the spirit beast's strength increases, we will naturally benefit. Especially since the spirit essence can directly raise the spirit beast's grade. Our cultivation will naturally rise as well. Moreover, if the 4 of us use the spirit-devouring mental cultivation method at the same time to devour the spirit essence of a Chao Wu and give it to 4 spirit beasts, the chances of success are quite high. Huyu also realized and said with a smile. The Chao Wu is a ferocious beast after all. I don't know if we can bear it. Shi Qiping said with some worry. Isn't that simple? Mannion said with a smile. You just have to use the mental cultivation method, and extract the spirit essence bit by bit. Everyone, don't forget, we still have the 5 skandhas spiritual awakening formation. Yuan Feng pointed at his feet in the distance and said with a smile, let's first gather the strength of all the disciples to activate the formation and release the Chao Wu's spirit essence under the formation. After using the formation to weaken its spirit essence, we can then use the mental cultivation method. How can it not succeed? Chapter 1882. That's right. Although an ant is small, it can still bite an elephant. Yu squinted his eyes and looked at the disciples on the altar. He smiled and said, after the formation is set up, we'll roughly impart the mental cultivation method to them and let their spiritual beasts absorb some of the essence. Then, we won't have to worry about the ferocity of the Chao Chi's essence. That's right. Yuan Feng clapped his hands again. The sect leader also thinks highly of this, which is why he asked me to do this. However, this 5 essences awakening formation, what does it have to do with the Chao Chi beasts? Elder Yuan actually found quite a few Chao Chi beasts? Mannion asked again. I don't know how to use it either. However, there's an incomplete sentence on the jade pendant, so I can only prepare for it. Yuan Feng smiled bitterly. However, Chao Chi beasts are hard to find. The ones that my spirit crane sect disciples found are all underage. I don't know if they can be used. Tisk tsk, Chao Chi beasts are second-class spiritual beasts. Once they mature, they have the strength of an early-stage foundation establishment realm cultivator. How can Chi refinement disciples find adult Chao Chi beasts? Yu smiled. Yuan Feng waved his hand. This thing isn't important, so I'm not afraid of others knowing about it. If they can find it, then they can find it. If they can't, then they can't. If it was important, I would have informed you long ago. The 3 of them did not comment. Elders, let's take a look at the mental cultivation methods first. Although these mental cultivation methods are incomplete, there are still some mysteries within them. I only managed to gain some understanding after looking at them for a long time. Right now, I want to spar with all of you and study them properly. Yuan Feng sat down and said, if this mission is effective, we'll remember Elder Yuan's kindness. Yu looked at the other 2 elders and said sincerely, us too. Zhiqiping and Mannion nodded. I am already satisfied with the 3 elders' intentions. Yuan Feng smiled. The 4 of us have been in the Spirit Crane sect for hundreds of years. We've been in high spirits when we were young. We've fought for power and cultivation, and we've also been suspicious of each other. Unfortunately, I've only realized now that everything is meaningless. Only the great Tao is above us. Elder Yuan is right. Mannion nodded and said, although I've known this for a long time, who can pursue the great Tao with peace of mind? Spirit stones, cultivation techniques, and even the soul essence in front of me. Zhiqiping smiled and said, alright, now that everything has been said, the spirit husbandry sect will still need us to support it together in the future. With this soul essence, the strength of the spirit husbandry sect will definitely increase greatly. In the future, we will still have to work together like today. Indeed, it's better to comprehend the mental cultivation method. Yuan Feng took out the jade slip and said, I'll tell you what I've comprehended. Above the altar in a corner, Qian Yuming was also holding a small jade slip. Below him, there were only a few aura refining disciples repairing the formation. Looking at the extremely small part of the formation in the jade slip, and comparing it with the completed part below him, his heart was filled with an indescribable feeling. He was still inferior to Miao Jun. After obtaining some information from the sect, he immediately ran around, wanting to obtain some benefits from the fire ape in the flame forest swamp. Unfortunately, in the end he realized that he was only a chess piece of the sect. Everything he did was to confuse the public. It was impossible for him to have any relationship with the fire ape. The only thing he could do was listen to the elders' arrangements and repair the formation. Forget it, it's better not to be wishful thinking. Qian Yuming smiled bitterly and thought to himself, that disciple called Xiaohua from the Imperial Thunder sect is really wise. He didn't come to the Flame Forest Swamp at all. A disciple with such a temperament. It's normal for him to have such a shocking cultivation. Then, the scene of Xiao Hua displaying his divine ability appeared in his mind again. A chill rose from the bottom of his heart, causing him to involuntarily shrink his neck. Unfortunately, how could Xiao Hua be someone he could guess? At this moment, Xiao Hua was standing respectfully on the mountain peak with Zhen Yi, welcoming the dozen or so cultivators who had just arrived. These dozen or so cultivators all had different appearances and cultivations. The ones at the front were early gold core cultivators. Behind these cultivators were their respective disciples. Their cultivations weren't weak, at least early foundation establishment. Fellow Taoist Zhen Yi, when I received your message, I immediately put aside my chores and rushed over. I hope I'm not too late. A short, wretched-looking old man with a sallow face cupped his hands and smiled. He was Lu Mingsheng, an early gold core cultivator from the Rinsing Flower sect. Behind him were two disciples, one at the early foundation establishment stage, and the other at the middle foundation establishment stage. Juniors Li Fengzhu and Shixian greet Martial Uncle Zhen. The two disciples from the Rinsing Flower sect also hurriedly stepped forward and saluted. Forget it, Zhen Yi flicked his sleeve and said. Martial nephews, it's only been a few years since I last saw you, but you've actually improved so quickly. At that time, this old man's disciples blushed with shame. Li Fengzhu and Shixian glanced at Xiangyang and Yanqinglian. They felt a bit strange, but since Zhen Yi didn't introduce them, they naturally didn't ask. Next to Lu Mingsheng was an extremely tall old man. He was also incomparably skinny, standing there like a bamboo pole. He could be compared to Xiao Hua. This old man was Jiang Zhuqing from the Xuanyan school. He also cupped his hands and said, Fellow Taoist Zhen, although this old man received your message first, but, I had to take care of some matters in the sect. Moreover, I had to be careful when working together with fellow Taoists from the Imperial Thunder sect, so I was a bit late. Zhen Yi waved his hand and said, conflicts between sects naturally have to be dealt with between sections. That's official business. Today's visit to Flame Forest Swamp is purely for personal relations. If fellow Taoist Jiang didn't participate, I'm afraid this matter would be even more difficult. At this moment, the two disciples behind Jiang Zhuqing also stepped forward and bowed. Juniors Jieming and Qianhan greet Martial Uncle Zhen. Rise. Zhen Yi smiled and waved his sleeve. Then, Zhen Yi turned to another early golden core state female cultivator, and said with a smile, Although I didn't send a message to Fairy Feng, in my opinion, since fellow Taoist Jiang is here, Feng Shuqing from the Huangdao sect can't be far away. This female cultivator was Fairy Feng Shuqing from the Huangdao sect. However, Feng Shuqing didn't have any methods to maintain her youth. Her face was wrinkled and she was indeed old. She was too different from how the fairy described her. However, there were also two beautiful female cultivators behind her. One had a plump figure with a smile on her face. The other had even bones and skin as white as snow. She could be called a fairy. Tsk Feng Shuqing spoke with an unpleasant voice. Old thief Zhen, I knew you didn't put me in your heart. You didn't even inform me of such an important matter. If it wasn't for fellow Taoist Zhang's message, I would still be in the dark. Even now you're still quibbling. Fairy Feng, are you here or are you not? Zhen Yi asked with a loud laugh. Feng Shuqing's triangular eyes flashed with a trace of a smile, but she didn't say anything else. Juniors Feng Jieyu and Qing Hao greet Martial Uncle Zhen. The two female cultivators' crisp voices rang out. After Zhen Yi helped them up, Feng Shuqing glanced at Xiangyang and the others and asked, Are these fellow Taoist Zhen's disciples? I don't think I've seen them before. Then, her gaze swept over Xiaohua and Shui and she frowned. Moreover, they brought two Qi refinement juniors. This trip to Flame Forest Swamp doesn't seem to be a place for boys training, right? Lu Mingsheng and Jiang Zhuqing naturally saw them, but they didn't want to say anything. Now that they heard this, they only looked at Zhen Yi curiously. Juniors Imperial Thunder Sect's Myriad Thunder Valley's disciples Xiangyang and Yanqinglian greet seniors and martial brothers. Xiangyang and Yanqinglian knew it was time for them to step forward and quickly bowed. Xiaohua and Shui also glanced at each other and stepped forward. Thunderclap Palace's myriad thunder valleys. Xiaohua greets seniors. Thunderclap Palace's Shui greets seniors. Xiaohua and Shui bowed. The Golden Core cultivators nodded slightly, and the Foundation Establishment cultivators cupped their hands in return. Among them, Xuanyan School's Qianhan was slightly taken aback when she heard Xiaohua's name. She seemed to be thinking about something. After a long while, she revealed an expression of understanding and looked at Xiaohua thoughtfully. That's strange. Myriad Thunder Valleys. Thunderclap Palace's disciples. Why are they following fellow Taoist Jinyi? Feng Shuqing waved his hand and motioned for the four to rise. He covered his mouth and laughed. Hee, of course there are some matters. Zhenyi smiled. Although I brought these four juniors here, they also have to play a role in this matter. Therefore they can't be considered as traveling with me. Zhenyi's words were clear, and Feng Shuqing and the others were slightly taken aback. Jiang Zhuqing gave Feng Shuqing a look, and Feng Shuqing spoke again. Why can't I understand fellow Taoist Zhen's words? The trip to Flame Forest Swamp should be counted by sections. How can your Imperial Thunder sect be divided into two? If that's the case, we might as well count according to the number of people. Even if we count according to the number of people, Qi Refinement disciples, I'm afraid it doesn't count. Jiang Zhuqing laughed. If that's the case, I would have brought over a dozen Qi Refinement juniors. Since I said it, I naturally have my reasons. However, there are still a few fellow Taoists who haven't arrived yet. Forgive me for not saying anything. What? Old Thief Zhen, you invited other fellow Taoists? Feng Shuqing was immediately dissatisfied. How many pills can the Thunder Beast's inner core refine? If there are many people, will there be enough for us to share? Zhenyi smiled and said, that Thunder Beast is with a fire ape. With the cultivation of the four of us, we should be able to trap the Thunder Beast. However, with the addition of a fire ape, will we succeed? Hearing this, not only did Feng Shuqing's expression change, but Jiang Zhuqing and Lu Mingsheng were also dissatisfied. Lu Mingsheng asked, fellow Taoist Jin, this is not appropriate. Since there's a fire ape, why didn't you say so in the message earlier? Otherwise, I could have asked the middle or late Gold Core senior brothers in the sect to help. Wouldn't both spirit beasts be subdued? Zhenyi knew that Lu Mingsheng's words could not be taken seriously, but he still smiled. Fellow Taoist Lu is right. It's a pity that the message I received was sent by four younger disciples. When I sent the message to you, I didn't know there was a fire ape. Chapter 1883. So that's how it is. Jiang Zhuqing's expression softened, but he still shook his head. So the news about the Thunder Beast was spread by fellow Taoist Zhen's juniors. Yes, fellow Taoist Zhen, you have to reward these four juniors well. But I'm afraid it's impossible for your Imperial Thunder sect to get a share of the medicinal pills just because of a piece of news. Feng Shuqing was even more astonished. He almost sneered. Fellow Taoist Zhen, these four juniors of yours are a little greedy? Although he said for juniors, it was obvious that he was referring to Zhenyi. Xiang Yang's face heated up slightly. He glanced at Zhenyi but didn't explain further. I naturally have to discuss this matter with you all. Zhenyi wasn't surprised, and he smiled as he spoke. But at this time, a red beam of light flew over. When Zhenyi saw the transmission talisman, he smiled and pointed in the direction from which the transmission talisman had come. I thought I was already prepared, but who would have thought that fellow Taoist Xiang Min of the Five Elements sect would be even more prepared? Five Elements sect? Xiang Min? Feng Shuqing frowned slightly and said reproachfully. Fellow Taoist Jin, don't tell me the helper you invited is this little child. It can't be considered an invitation. Zhenyi smiled bitterly. He knew that Xiang Min's reputation wasn't good. It's just a coincidence. As he spoke, he clapped his hands and sent out a messaging talisman. A moment later, Xiang Min's small figure appeared on the horizon not far away. Beside him were two early-stage Golden Core cultivators, and three Foundation Establishment disciples behind them. Zhenyi looked at everyone and gestured for them to stay on the mountain peak. He went forward and cupped his hands. Fellow Taoist Xiang, you're actually so well prepared. This is beyond my expectations. It's not just that. Xiangmin's face showed a hint of pride. He glanced at everyone on the mountain peak and said, I've been preparing for this fire ape for many years. If I wasn't confident, how would I dare to invite my friends? Then he turned around and said, Come fellow Taoist Zhang, fellow Taoist Sun. This is fellow Taoist Jun of the Imperial Thunder Sect. Then the two golden core cultivators besides Xiangmin greeted Zhen Yi. Their disciples also came over to greet them. It turned out that fellow Taoist Zhang was a cultivator from Jinghua City, Zhang Qingguang. His two early-stage foundation establishment disciples were Zhu Ming and Bai Mu. The other fellow Taoist Sun was a cultivator from the Imperial Elixir School, Sun Shangkong. His disciple was the early-stage foundation establishment Li Mian. After the greetings were over, Zhen Yi brought the four of them to the mountain peak. The cultivators from the various sects got to know each other and exchanged pleasantries. These were all golden core cultivators. Although some of them hadn't met before, they were all familiar with each other's names. For a moment, the mountain peak was filled with a joyous atmosphere. After a long while, everyone became familiar with each other. Then Zhen Yi said with a smile, Although we all have our own plans for coming to Flame Forest Marsh, because the Fire Ape and the Thunder Beast are in the same place, we naturally have to act together. Previously, I was the initiator of this matter, and fellow Taoist Xiang was also the initiator of this matter. From now on, one person will have to be in charge. What do you think, fellow Taoist Xiang? Xiangmin didn't find this strange. She nodded and said, Fellow Taoist Jun's thoughts are exactly what I was thinking. But if fellow Taoist Jun is the one in charge, how will you arrange the future operations? Hehe, I naturally have my own plans. But do I have to tell you now? Zhen Yi glanced at Xiangmin and didn't say much. Hehe, fellow Taoist Jun, since you want to be our leader, if you don't tell me, how can I be convinced? Even if I'm convinced, how can fellow Taoist Sun and fellow Taoist Zhang listen to your arrangements? Xiangmin said with a fake smile. Zhen Yi thought for a moment and said with a smile, My arrangements are simple. We'll gather together first and find the Fire Ape and the Thunder Beast in Flame Forest Marsh. When they're unprepared, we'll separate them. My group will attack the Thunder Beast while fellow Taoist Xiang's group will attack the Fire Ape. As for the specific details, we'll discuss it in detail after the matter is confirmed. What do you think, fellow Taoist Xiang? Haha. Xiangmin shook her little head like a rattledrum and said with a laugh, Fellow Taoist Jun's arrangement. To be honest, it's no different from having no arrangement at all. Zhen Yi's expression didn't change. He said calmly, What do you mean, fellow Taoist Xiang? First of all, Flame Forest Marsh is so big that it's not easy to find the Fire Ape and the Thunder Beast. Moreover, if we find the Fire Ape and the Thunder Beast, won't they also find us? Separating them, TSK, I'm afraid it won't be easy. Xiangmin said with assurance. Moreover, since we've already merged into one, doesn't fellow Taoist Jun want a share of the Fire Ape's inner core? Hehe, I won't hide it from fellow Taoist Jun. The Thunder Beast's inner core. I'm somewhat coveting it. Zhen Yi still had a card up his sleeve. He said with a smile. I naturally have a way to find that Thunder Beast. Fellow Taoist Xiang doesn't have to worry about this. Even if we set up an ambush, it's not impossible to let that Thunder Beast fall into our trap. But what fellow Taoist Xiang said without waiting for Zhen Yi to finish speaking, Xiangmin's face revealed a look of pleasant surprise. She said anxiously, What? Fellow Taoist Jun has a way to lure the Thunder Beast over? If so, our grand plan will succeed. Zhen Yi's eyes turned rapidly. He nodded slightly and said with a smile, That's right. I have a way to lure the Thunder Beast over. However, what does fellow Taoist Xiang mean by, the grand plan will succeed? Ha ha ha, Xiangmin didn't say anything else. She said with a smile, As expected, my opportunity has arrived. The heavens actually sent fellow Taoist Jun to me. I can't not want this Fire Ape's inner core. Fellow Taoist Jun, let's settle the matter of how we're going to distribute these two inner cores first. When Zhen Yi saw that Xiangmin was so confident, he couldn't help but be stunned. He turned to look at Lu Mingxing and the rest, then at Xiao Hua. He turned back and said to Xiang Min, "Fellow Taoist Xiang, didn't you just say which fellow Taoist would be in charge of this matter? How did it become the distribution of inner cores?" "Fellow Taoist Zhen. Which sect do I belong to?" Xiang Min said proudly. "If fellow Taoist Zhen has the confidence to lure the fire ape and the thunder beast over, then Xiang Min has the confidence to kill these two evil beasts. Since the two of us rely on each other, then what difference does it make who's the one in charge?" 5 elements sex array formation? Zhen Yi suddenly came to a realization. Joy also appeared on his face. He laughed loudly and said, "I don't understand array formations myself, so I neglected 5 elements sex array formation. With fellow Taoist Xiang's array formation, I'm afraid the 2 spirit beasts won't be able to escape." Feng Shuqing, Jiang Zhucheng, and the others were also overjoyed when they heard this. Jiang Zhucheng also participated in the encirclement of the thunder beast last time. After all, the thunder beast's cultivation was at the middle stage of the gold core realm. Several early-stage gold core realm cultivators relied on magic treasures and other things, but they could only fight to a draw with the thunder beast. There was even a slight gap between them and the thunder beast. With the help of the array formation, these 7 early-stage gold core realm cultivators and a group of foundation establishment realm disciples could definitely kill the thunder beast and the fire ape. So before the thunder beast and the fire ape are lured here, fellow Taoist Zhen can be in charge. After these 2 evil beasts enter the array formation, I'll be in charge. What do you think?" Xiang Min was in a good mood and said while clapping her hands. Chapter 1884. Great. I have no objections. What about you, fellow Taoists? Zhen Yi was the first to agree. After everyone agreed, Xiang Min smiled and said, "Since we're so fated, we might as well divide the thunder beasts and the fire ape's cores into 7 portions, 1 for each of us." Zhang Qingguang and Sun Shangkong naturally agreed, while the other cultivators looked at Zhen Yi. Zhen Yi smiled and said, "Our thunder beast's cores are used to refine medicinal pills. If fellow Taoist Xiang doesn't mind my pill refining techniques, you can leave this matter to me and I'll just take the medicinal pills in the future. Otherwise, I'll take fellow Taoist's portion of the core." "Hee, there's no need to trouble fellow Taoist Zhen. I'll just take the original core." Xiang Min smiled and said, "As for the fire ape's core, what I can give fellow Taoist is also the original core." That's great." Zhen Yi nodded and said, "However, the cores of the 2 beasts can't be divided into 7 portions, but 8 portions." Why is that?" Xiang Min looked at the golden core cultivator beside Zhen Yi and asked curiously. "It's like this." Zhen Yi smiled and said, "This poor Taoist wasn't able to lure the lightning beast over. Instead, it was a junior disciple of this poor Taoist who had the means to lure the fire ape over. Fellow Taoist Xiang has seen this junior disciple before." As he spoke, Zhen Yi pointed at Xiao Hua and said, "This is Xiao Hua, a disciple of my Thunderclap Palace's Myriad Thunder Valley. He has a magic tool that can lure the fire ape over. However, he's not my disciple, so I can't force him to do anything. The price he has to pay is a portion of the thunder beasts and the fire ape's cores." Afterward, Zhen Yi repeated what Xiao Hua said to everyone and said with a smile, "I originally thought that since we're all cultivators of the Thunderclap sect and belong to the same sect, it's inappropriate to ask for an extra portion. However, since Xiao Hua has this idea, he must have his reasons. Xiao Hua indeed has no use for the medicinal pills I've refined. Therefore, I'll leave this matter to everyone to decide." Xiang Min stared at Xiao Hua, as if she wanted to see through him. Soon after, she chuckled and said, "Xiang Min naturally has no objections. The thunder beast's inner core is abundant, so it doesn't matter if it's a little less. Moreover, if it wasn't for Xiao Hua's fire-drawing ape technique, Xiang Min's formation could only be empty. What do fellow Taoist Zhang and fellow Taoist Sun think?" Zhang Qingguang and Sun Shangkong naturally followed Xiang Min's lead. Without hesitation, they smiled and said, "I agree." "I don't agree." Before Xiang Min could say anything, Feng Shouqing shrieked, "I was wondering how fellow Taoist Jin was going to distribute the lightning beast cores. It turns out, You want to keep an extra portion for yourself. According to what I know, the distribution ratio has already been set. Each sect can only get one portion. Why did it change today? No wonder fellow Taoist Zhen didn't mention it just now and insisted on waiting for fellow Taoist Xiang to come over. Could it be? Zhen Yi was unhappy at first. He raised his eyebrows. Feng Baiqing? What's wrong? Could it be that fellow Taoist Zhen has made an appointment with me? Isn't it? You have made an agreement before. Feng Baiqing naturally wasn't afraid of me and retorted. Seeing this, Jiang Zhuqing hurriedly stepped forward and frowned. Fellow Taoist Feng, we are discussing the distribution of the spiritual beast's inner core. There's no need to involve other things. Since you don't agree, then don't agree. Feng Baiqing took a step back and looked coldly to the side. Fellow Taoist Zhen, I won't say anything else. Jiang Zhuqing smiled. Although Xiaohua is a disciple of the 10,000 Thunder Valley, he is also a disciple of your Thunder Palace and your Thunder Controlling Sect. He can be your helper and can be regarded as your disciple's helper. Fellow Taoist Zhen can deal with his benefits after the Thunder Controlling Sect. There's no need to entangle with us. Fellow Taoist Zhen, do you think his contribution is the same as ours? Is he qualified to get this portion of the spiritual beast's inner core? My opinion is the same as fellow Taoist Feng's. I don't agree with this. And Zhen Yi didn't find it strange and looked at Lu Mingxing of the Rinsing Flower Sect. Lu Mingxing thought for a moment and sighed. According to my previous opinion, which is also the same as fellow Taoist Feng and fellow Taoist Jiang, Xiaohua is only an aura refining disciple. He really can't compare with us. It's impossible for him to get an extra share. However, things have changed now. First, there is the addition of the Fire Ape. That's a 5th stage spiritual beast with an early gold core cultivation base, but we don't have the slightest chance of defeating it. Second, there is the participation of fellow Taoist Xiang and the others, as well as fellow Taoist Xiang's formation. With this formation and fellow Taoist Xiang, and the others' help, I'm afraid our chances of success will increase by another 40%. But think about it, if the Thunder Beast and the Fire Ape don't enter this formation, what's the use of this 40% chance of success? However, if fellow Taoist Xiang follows us to look for the Thunder Beast, I'm afraid our chances of killing the Thunder Beast and the Fire Ape won't increase by even 10%, right? Fellow Taoist Lu, you mean you agree to give the Thunder Controlling Sect 2 portions? Jiang Zhuqing said thoughtfully. I don't completely agree. Lu Mingxing said with a smile. If Xiaohua can lure the Fire Ape over, then the Thunder Beast can naturally follow. This way, our chances of killing it will increase by 20%, but the problem is, can Xiaohua lure the Fire Ape over? That's right. Feng Xuqing screamed again. Fellow Taoist Xiang, don't tell me you don't have any methods to lure the Fire Ape over when you set up the formation? Of course I do. Xiang Min's expression turned cold. My disciple, Chan Xinyan, has a raging fire physique, and precisely has the Fire Ape's bloodline. I originally wanted to borrow his true spirit true blood to lure the Fire Ape over, but I don't know which bastard killed him, and even his corpse can't be found. This matter, fellow Taoist Zhen also knows about it. And that's right. Because of this matter, fellow Taoist Xiang even misunderstood me, thinking that I killed his disciple, and even attacked him. Zhen Yi suddenly understood why Xiang Min was so angry, and attacked him without saying anything else. Motherfucker, I'm really lucky. Xiaohua didn't raise his head. He kept looking at the ground, and he inwardly cried out that he was lucky. Jiang Zhuqing spoke again. Fellow Taoist Lu, do you mean, if Xiaohua can really lure the Fire Ape and the Thunder Beast over, he can get a share of the spiritual beast's inner cores? Isn't this too easy? Xiang Min sneered and said. If fellow Taoist Jiang has the ability to lure the Fire Ape over, I can give you half of my share of the spiritual beast's inner cores. Fellow Taoist Xiang, Feng Xuqing sneered. How can you be so generous? Could it be that your previous allocation? That's right. Xiang Min said proudly. In my agreement with fellow Taoist Zhang and fellow Taoist Sun, luring the Fire Ape is also part of it. So that's how it is. Xiaohua was delighted. Since there was a precedent, he wasn't afraid of anything. You can wait for the precedent, but I don't agree with it. Feng Shuqing glanced at the two disciples behind him and said, these two foundation-building disciples of mine also have to contribute, so there's no need to mention allocation at all. What qualifications does an aura-refining disciple have? Why don't all the disciples be included? But when she said this, she shut her mouth again. The Imperial Thunder sect obviously needed 2 more disciples. Cough cough, Jiang Zhuqing coughed twice, interrupting Feng Shuqing's words. He looked at Lu Mingxing and asked, fellow Taoist Lu, do you agree or not? Hee, Lu Mingxing laughed and said, if Xiaohua can lure the fire ape over, I'll agree. Otherwise, I won't agree. Great. Zheng Yi clapped and said, now I have 7 fellow Taoists. Even if you exclude me, you still have 3.5 fellow Taoists who agree, so this matter is settled. Fellow Taoist Lu didn't say he agreed. Feng Shuqing said anxiously. What? Fellow Taoist Feng, am I wrong? Zheng Yi sneered and said, if fellow Taoist Feng thinks you can kill the Thunder Beast, then there's no problem. The entire Thunder Beast's inner core is yours. I definitely don't want anything. Now I can obviously get an extra portion of the Fire Ape's inner core. Fellow Taoist Xiang already understood. And fellow Taoist Lu also understood. Why can't fellow Taoist Feng understand? But your Imperial Thunder sect will get an extra portion of the spiritual beast's inner core, Feng Shuqing argued. That's because my Imperial Thunder sect's disciple has the ability. Zheng Yi was a bit angry. If your disciple can lure the fire ape over, this portion will also be yours. Why not? My disciple also has a fire physique. Feng Shuqing said without hesitation. Then he pointed at the female cultivator with the well-proportioned bones and said, Qinghao, come here. Yes, master. Qinghao obeyed and came forward. He, the disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect, right? Xiangmin glanced at Qinghao and sneered. This old man naturally knows about the Imperial Thunder sect's fire rat bloodline. If you want to kill the first-rank spiritual beast, the fire rat, your disciple's bloodline will certainly be useful. However, if you want to lure the fire ape over, this old man thinks you'd better not overestimate yourself. Although Qinghao was a foundation-building cultivator, her face had already turned red from being mocked by a golden core cultivator. However, she didn't dare to retort, and could only look down at the ground. Feng Shuqing was too anxious and neglected the matter of the bloodline for a moment, which made him lose face for no reason. Just as she was about to speak, Jiang Zhuqing hurriedly said, all right, don't make fun of the younger generation. We still have to learn from fellow Taoist Jin, and guide the younger generation. Since most of the fellow Taoists have agreed, let's do it this way. Qinghao hurriedly stepped back. Zheng Yi nodded and said, fellow Taoist Jiang is right. This matter isn't a big deal in the first place. 90% of the Thunder Beast's inner core is enough for us to refine medicinal pills. I was just afraid that everyone would hold a grudge, so I said it. Great. Fellow Taoist Jin is really open and aboveboard. Xiangmin clapped and praised. No matter if it's I or fellow Taoist Xiang, we should be fair. Zheng Yi said with a smile. Xiangmin smiled again, and ignored Zheng Yi. Instead, she looked at Xiaohua and asked with interest, Xiaohua, this old man has a question. Senior Xiang, please. Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly bowed. This old man wants to know, if we don't agree to let you have a share, what will you do? Xiaohua didn't think at all and said with a smile, Senior, this matter, isn't it meaningless? Seniors have already decided on this matter. How can we go back on our words? This junior will just follow the seniors. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.